Lee Summit is your destination for big city vibes and small town charm.
Head to the downtown Lee Summit Farmers Market, where local meets fresh. Then grab a cup of coffee and discover a variety of shops and boutiques just around the corner. Continue the fun in downtown Lee Summit at a retro arcade bar. Discover your new beer at one of our 6 locally owned breweries. Cool off with some handcrafted cocktails at happy hour. End the night with live music and good company. Lee Summit, Missouri.
Hello, Lee Summit. I'm Laura, and this is your flash briefing for the week of December 16th. City Council will hold a joint session Tuesday night with the Lee Summit Parks and Rec Board at 6 in Council Chambers and City Hall. Meetings are open to the public or watched live on the city's YouTube channel. If you can't watch, catch the recorded meeting on demand on the YouTube channel or by subscribing to the Council Debrief newsletter, which breaks down 3 to 4 key agenda items. Subscribe at cityofls.net. Did you know Santa was coming to town? To the Lee Summit History Museum, to be more specific. Selfies with Santa will be taking place December 21st from 3 to 5 p.m. at the museum, free of charge. All you have to do is take the photo. Oh, what fun. A reminder to Jackson County taxpayers, Lee Summit City Hall is currently unable to process tax payments, print receipts, or create waivers. Taxpayers are advised to visit a Jackson County location or pay online at jacksongov.org. And 'tis the season to purchase LS merch. Stumped on stocking stuffers? Look no further than the LS Marketplace at City Hall. It has great items like Lee Summit branded socks, Tervis tumblers, coasters, and more. Show off your Lee Summit pride. It's open 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. Thanks for listening and have a great week.
I'm Assistant Chief Jim Eden.
And I'm Battalion Chief Ben Hicks.
And today we're at Lee Summit Fire Station 3. Fire Station 3 was part of the 2016 no tax increase general obligation bond for public safety initiatives. The station was built and occupied in August of 2020. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we've not been able to give tours or have an actual ribbon cutting. So we want to invite you in today to give you the opportunity to see what goes on within a Lee Summit Fire Department station.
Let's go take a tour. This is our admin side of the facility. We use this side mainly for offices. We have a lot of work during the day, whether it's training or doing reports or just generally taking care of the shift that we need to do. At this particular station, Station 3, we do have an assistant chief that works out of here. That person has their own office where they need to manage what's going on throughout the day with the shift and staffing, and as well as running calls out of here. The captain has their own office as well. What the captain does is at this specific station is in charge of both the fire truck that's here as well as the ambulance. And so with all those personnel responsibilities as well as running calls and reports, that's where they work out of. And generally for the rest of the crew, which is somewhere around 5 to 6 individuals, we have rooms to write reports, and we have additional training rooms and other rooms where people can work. Walking into our living area, I think it's important to recognize that we work 48-hour shifts. So in the evenings, after 5 o'clock, after work is done, we may have the opportunity to catch a game or something else as long as we're not running calls. And this gives us the opportunity to do that. When we go into our kitchen, I think this gives you a great reason to know why we go to the grocery store. When you see fire trucks at the grocery store, what we're doing. Well, so for 2 days working for 48 hours, we buy all our meals at the grocery store, and then we come in here and cook. Just like you guys do at home. So everybody has their own fridge on each shift as well as their own pantry, and then we cook those meals here. Going into the sleeping side of things, we've got a couple different things that are significant. We have our own laundry room, which again is important when we're here for 48 hours. The opportunity to wash and clean our clothes and bedding is very important for hygiene. And walking into where our beds are, we keep the kind of sleeping quarters over on one side of the building. It gives us both easy access out to where our fire apparatus are, as well as kind of keeping it a little bit quieter for those people that have been up all night running calls. We have 11 bedrooms here at this station, and the reason we built it with so many bedrooms is we want to give ourselves as a city the opportunity to expand. So if we need to put another apparatus here or numerous other people working at this station, that's already in place as far as infrastructure goes, and we don't need to go back and try to make it bigger or better, and that's really important for us, especially because the old station was so small. Back out on the apparatus floor, we have doors facilitated as many places as possible, so that way when we're sleeping at night and a call comes out, we can make our way out fairly quickly to get out onto the truck if we need to and run a call. On the other side of the station, we kind of have other stuff that we may want to keep separated if we want to. Physical fitness is very important to us as firefighters. So in order to better ourselves and make sure we're as healthy as we can to do this job, we have our own gym facility here that we kind of go throughout the day when we can and get an opportunity to come in and work out. Our goal when we run calls, when we get back to the station after calls, our goal is to get ready to go back as soon as we can to run another call. So we have the opportunity or capability here to fill up our air tanks. You see firefighters wear the big air tanks on their backs and they use those in a fire. We can come back and fill those up and make sure that we're ready to go again when we're wanting to go run another call. We have our own workshop here. We work on a lot of our tools and making sure that everything's clean and operational, and this gives us the capability to do that, again, to make sure that we have everything we need and we're as capable as we can be running calls throughout the city. Cancer prevention is very important in the fire service right now. Because of that, we have an extractor machine, and what this does is gives us the capability when we come back from a fire, we can put our bunker gear into this machine and get all that really nasty crud off of our gear. Again, kind of getting back into that cancer prevention mode, allowing us to be as clean as we possibly can for the next call. And finally is our bunker gear room. We each have our own individual locker. This gives us the opportunity to store our gear when we're not here working in between shifts, as well as keep a clean extra set on here in case we do run a fire and we need to clean our current gear. Typically, this is where your day starts off at the fire station. You come in and get your gear and put it on wherever you're working that day, and then you end the same way, bring your stuff back to your locker to go home after working. This is Med 3. This ambulance just currently moved into the station from Station 7. Station 3, since we've had it built, has turned into one of our busiest stations in the city. Therefore, we wanted to provide the best care and the closest unit as we could. So we moved one of our ambulances up, and this became Med 3 for this particular instance. Out of this station, we also have Pumper 3. And that's a fire apparatus that they utilize to run the calls on this west end of the city. The last vehicle that you see is the chief's vehicle. We have 2 shift chiefs on shift every day, and they split the city. And this chief running out of this station typically covers the west and south area of the city, while our chief of Station 2 covers kind of that northeast section of our city, and they divide it up evenly.
Thank you for going on a tour with us today. If you have any other questions about the Lee Summit Fire Department, please go to our webpage at lsfire.net or follow us on Facebook at Lee Summit Fire Department.
Thanks for joining us on the tour.
It's member level. Thank you, Mayor. Great presentation, Ryan. Thank you. Is there any indicator that shows, are we supporting a need?
You know how they talk about like gym rats, kids that grew up with their dads that were coaches? Like I was a city hall rat. My dad, Tom Lovell, was hired as the Parks Administrator in 1978 and spent 40 years in public service here in Lee Summit. I would go up on the weekends when he was working, and I'd run around and play and do things, and I didn't know what he was doing at the time, but I just knew that was part of our weekend routine some days, was to go up and hang out at City Hall. Being part of a city from a young age to now in my adult life, you reap so many benefits from that. The people you know, you care more for something that you've been a part of. My wife and I knew we wanted to raise a family. Just trying to find a community that we thought we could raise our children in, that was good to me. And it just felt like the right move as we were deciding on a city to come back to. Fortunate to have started a business in 2018. I founded Level Insurance Group, and we are a business insurance brokerage. So we help businesses procure insurance. Decided to throw our flag in the ground here in Lee Summit, and it's grown. I also have this passion for learning and curiosity, and I started a podcast series. So I really enjoy this opportunity where I sit down with business owners and tell their story and get this out to other people in hopes that maybe it betters their life and gives them some inspiration. It's going to be a really exciting time, and obviously this city's in my blood. My dad's been a part of it for a long time, so I'm really excited. Thank you all. A lot of people would say I was crazy, right? So why do you throw your hand up and subject yourself to going into city politics? I think, especially as I've gotten older, I just felt, maybe a civic duty, like a responsibility to say, hey, this city's been great to me. Here's a way that I can give back and take some of my skills and put them to work for the people of this city. I wanted to bring a different, maybe way of thinking and take some of my business acumen and see areas that it may apply to how we develop and grow this community and just give a different perspective. One of our biggest challenges, but also one of our biggest opportunities, is how do we develop and grow this community? We don't want to grow too fast, but we want to grow at a pace that helps support, who and what we are as a community. So, we've got a lot of opportunities, whether that be through development or parks. We've got a lot of land coming on board. So I just think it's important, it's a challenge, but it's also our greatest opportunity. And so we just got to be smart how we do that. It's just asking some different questions. I'm one that I'm not contrarian for contrarian's sake. What I am is someone will tell me something, and then I want to get to that position with them by just asking thoughtful questions along the way. And then if I can get there, then I feel like we've answered everything we can to move that forward, versus, hey, here's kind of how we've done it. I'm never this is how we do it, this is how we've always done it, and this is how we'll continue to do it. Office of Council Member for District 2. All of my practical experience has put me in this position to serve, and I just raised my hand and said I want to do that. For which I was elected on April 5th, 2022. I feel this obligation to carry this legacy that my dad did, my family did, and then giving my kids an environment to grow up in that makes them want to come back. My kids have started rec sports through the Parks and Recreation system, and I'm watching them play soccer on this sport field that, my dad helped develop. And my dad's sitting there with me, right? I mean, that's the stuff that really matters in life.
Gray button at the bottom, Bill. On the side. Gray button. There you go.
Test, test, test. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Turn it up. Yeah, if you all can turn it up back there, that would help a little bit. Hey, welcome everyone. Last meeting of the year for the City Council, and is this the last meeting for the Planning Commission?
We are done.
Okay. Would you all please rise for the invocation and stay standing for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Our Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for this day, and this opportunity to be before Thee, and to meet, decide on issues for the City of Lee Summit. Bless us with Thy Spirit so that we will be able to know what the people and the citizenry of this city need. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have microphones around the table. Is this better on the volume? What about when Mr. Kitchens did the prayer? Could you hear him okay? I'm kissing this mic right now. I don't. Everybody wants to kiss it after me, but
Press on the gray button on the
Did
bottom
it.
there, so the green lights up.
all right.
Is there volume we can turn up on these at all?
Yeah. Go ahead. I don't think yours was on.
Test, test. 1, 2, 3.
They had the light
Is
on.
that good?
Speakers are heading
All right.
out there, so
Yep.
it's not quite as loud in this area.
Okay. I'm getting thumbs up out there on mine.
Okay.
Mark, say something.
Hello?
He's good?
You got to eat
All right.
these things, huh? Okay.
All right, well, with that, I will call to order the City of Lee Summit joint session with the Planning Commission, regular session number 23 to order. Could I get a roll call, please, for the City Council, and then we will go to Planning Commission.
Councilmember Hodges.
Here.
Councilmember Pryor.
Here.
Councilmember Shields.
Here.
Councilmember Rader.
Here.
Councilmember Lovell.
Here.
Councilmember Carlisle.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Here.
Mayor Baird.
Here. Okay, and for the Planning Commission, please?
Chairperson Funk.
President?
Commissioner Arth. Commissioner Frazier.
Here.
Commissioner Jana Ford.
Here.
Commissioner Kitchens.
Here?
Commissioner Lovelace. Commissioner Benbrook. Commissioner Tuzinski.
Here.
Commissioner Trafton.
Present.
All right, excellent. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
I move to approve the
Go ahead.
agenda.
Councilmember Shields?
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Shields to approve the agenda, seconded by Councilmember Carlisle. Discussion? Seeing none, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Shields.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlisle.
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
Councilmember Hodges.
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell.
Aye.
Councilmember Rader.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Aye.
Mayor Baird.
Aye. Okay, and the next item is the consent agenda. I would need a motion.
Mayor, I would move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Shields to approve the consent agenda, seconded by Councilmember Carlisle. Discussion? Seeing none, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Rader.
Aye.
Councilmember Hodges.
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell.
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
Councilmember Shields.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlisle.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Aye.
Mayor Baird.
Aye. All right, very good. We come together on this night before we do council roundtable just to talk to the crowd, to the audience, but also any viewers that would watch this. This is a joint meeting where we come together with our planning commission. We've been doing this for many, many years now, since I think 6 or 7 years, 6 years at least. So it's a great time for us to get on the same page. The planning commission does a tremendous amount of due diligence for the city council. They do a lot of the legwork, and we appreciate that. Donnie Funk is the chairperson for the Planning Commission, and you pretty much conduct them very similar to I do. You got a great team around you that asked a lot of tough questions from staff, but of developers, applicants, making sure that we have the best quality products and more. So this is a great time for us to say thank you for all your hard work, but also maybe even talk about how we can be sure that we're working complementary to each other and supporting each other. Not just you supporting us, but us supporting you as well. So thank you for bringing your team, the commission with you, and I don't know if you would like to say a couple words.
Well, thank you, Mayor. We look forward to our discussion tonight. We had a great meeting leading up to what we're going to talk about tonight, so we look forward to it and any other open dialogue we need to have tonight.
Did you have to pry information out of them, or did they willingly share?
No, I think Amy did a great job of getting us all in the room, and she locked the door and piled the table full of candy, and we got a lot done that night.
Good, good. Okay, well, before we begin the meeting, we have a few items of business we need to take care of. First is council roundtable. These are items of general interest, things going on in the community, anything you want to share with your district, things of that nature. So I'll open it up. Councilmember Shields.
Thank you, Mayor. There will be more selfies with Santa at the Historical Museum this weekend, and I also want to wish everybody a happy Hanukkah and a Merry Christmas. They actually, Hanukkah starts on Christmas this year, which is very rare, so it's going to be a wonderful holiday season for everybody.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you. Others? All right. Okay. Planning commissioners, you're more than welcome to share. Anything going on that you want to make sure we know about? Okay. Then we will go to public comments. I don't believe I have any, do we?
I have not received any public comments.
No public comments. And then before we get to business, I have one more thing. I have a proclamation. So could I get Joel Wilson and anybody you'd like to bring with you, Joel? I'm going to meet you out front here. All right, we have a proclamation this evening from Joel Wilson and his team right here. So kind of square up and face this way. I think the cameras will be kind of this way. I'll read the proclamation and we'll kind of pass it around and say a few words. All right? Yeah. So let me get my eyes in focus here. Whereas Toys for Tots began in 1947 when Major Bill Hendricks with the U.S. Marine Corps Forces Reserve and a group of Marine reservists in Los Angeles collected and distributed 5,000 toys to children. Whereas Major Hendricks' 1947 campaign was so successful that the Marine Corps adopted Toys for Tots the next year, expanding it into a nationwide campaign. In 1948, Marine Corps Reserve conducted Toys for Tots campaigns at Marine Reserve centers around the country. Since then, the United States Marine Corps have conducted successful nationwide campaigns during the holiday season each year. Their initial objective, which remains the hallmark of the program today, is to bring the joy of Christmas to America's less fortunate children. And whereas Toys for Tots plays an active role in the development of America's most valuable natural resource, her children, to help less fortunate children throughout the United States experience the joy of Christmas, to unite all members of local communities in a common cause for 3 months each year during the annual toy collection and distribution campaign, and to contribute to better communities in the future. Whereas the members of the Simpson-Hoggett Detachment 984 Marine Corps League actively support the Toys for Tots organization and collection of toys from local businesses and organizations in the city of Lee Summit and surrounding communities. In 1923, the Kansas City Toys for Tots served 273 organizations, 424 individual families, collected over 64,000 toys, and supported 44 Toys for Tots events. In 2024, they exceeded their totals by helping an additional 7,000 children. By virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Lee Summit, I do hereby proclaim December 2024 as Toys for Tots Month. All right. I mean, what an amazing event, organization as far as putting this together. So thank you for bringing this forward. I know Councilmember Hodges had said something, and I was like, yes, bring them in because this is a great thing that you guys are doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm Joel Wilson and represent the Marine Corps League Detachment here in Lee Summit, the Simpson-Hoggett 984 Detachment. And we've been doing this for quite a few years. And in conjunction with our Lee Summit Fire Department and Lee Summit Police Department, we do have a couple of plaques representing their efforts toward last year. We're still finishing up the campaign this year. So it's my pleasure to present these plaques to the Lee Summit Fire Department and Police Department. Specifically, I'm presenting these plaques to Deputy Fire Chief R.B. Todd and Detective John Easley to recognize their leadership and dedication to the Toys for Tots efforts over the last 10 years. Through their efforts and a little friendly challenge between them, they have led their departments to become large donors of new unwrapped toys for local families in need. While it's true that each department is a donation collection point for the community to drop off their toy donations, our first responders step up every year to make a point to donate as well in hopes of besting the other in total donations collected. Thank you to you both and to all of our city first responders.
Could I hear who else here? Can we go down the line and introduce yourselves?
Lance Ryder. I'm a past commandant for Simpson-Hoggett and currently the Western Regional Vice Commandant for the state organization.
My name's Dale Mellon. I was just elected the detachment commandant of Simpson-Hoggett. So this is kind of a way to throw me in the water and see if I sink or swim.
And I'm Pat Wilson, no relation to Joel here, but I've just been elected the Senior Vice Commandant, and we want to thank you for your support and effort in the Toys for Tots. Yes.
Deputy Chief R.B. Todd. I want to thank the Marines for the partnership. I'm from a couple Army veterans here, so I want to thank the mayor and city council and also the city employees, fire, police, and general corps. So thank you very much.
And I'm Detective John Easley. I want to thank the leadership at the Lee Summit Police Department, Deputy Chief John Bunker and Chief Travis Forbes, and of course Chief Mike Snyder at the Lee Summit Fire Department and Deputy Chief R.B. Todd, my good friend. It's odd that two Army veterans would support a Marine Corps function, but you guys serve a very noble purpose, and God bless for what you guys have done.
Okay, so this is where you have locations at a location for the police and the fire. Do you have one location for each, and where is the location?
I think they could speak more to that. I think the fire department might spread it out between their different houses, and the police department there at the main house.
Would you share those locations, and what's the last day to drop something off? Is it passed?
Yeah, the last day's already passed. The Marines are taking care of getting the toys ready now. We have our main point at headquarters on Douglas, and PD does at their police station. So we've had people come in from the public and donate, plus city employees.
Well, I think next year let's do this at the beginning of December or middle of November or something, and then we can help drive people. I think that people would love to donate to the cause and be a part of it. So. And I'll end with, we're going to take a photo in a second, but I do want to thank you all for your service to our country, but also to our communities with your continued. Thank you. And who's going to take our photo? I will. Oh, there she is. Thank you. Kind of makes you want to go grab some toys and give them to some kids, doesn't it?
They always try to hide behind the guys.
All right, well, thank you, everyone, for your support on that. And we will go ahead and start the business items on the agenda. The first thing we have tonight is a presentation. Agenda item 6A, Unified Development Ordinance Discussion, updates to architecture requirements. We have Adair Bright, Senior Planner, Amy Nassif, Ryan Elam here. But we also are going to have a consultant come in here in a second. I'll let him introduce himself, and we will get started.
Let me try this way. Amy Nassif, Interim Director of Development. Thanks everybody for coming tonight. We are excited to have this joint session with you all to start talking about our architecture updates to our code. Really, this work started a few years ago with our Ignite comprehensive plans and the goals that we set, the discussions we had back then on what do we want the future development and redevelopment to look like as we continue to grow and thrive as a city. What are those community design standards and features and those site design features? And so this springboards that and helps us with that implementation of one of these items in that comprehensive plan. So tonight we have with us our consultant, Christopher Shires, with Confluence, leading this effort for us. And so I'm going to turn it over to him, and he'll be doing the presentation and working with you all tonight. Thank you.
Okay. All right, it switched over. Mayor, City Council members, Commission members, my name again is Christopher Shires, Principal and Vice President with Confluence, the consultant you have hired to help you through the process to update your building design regulations, your building architectural standards. And so for tonight, I do have a presentation to try to keep us on track, but I want to give you some information and then I want to hear from you. So as I go through this presentation, feel free to interrupt me if something's unclear, if you have any questions, but I definitely have a part of this where I want to continue our conversation and our discussion that you've already been having. And so do want to recap our project scope and schedule, how we're getting here. And by the way, am I loud enough? Because I can always be louder. Okay. And then the areas of focus. What is the intent with this phase of code update as it's based on your comprehensive plan? And then when we look at design regulations for buildings, what are those main considerations? What are those ways we look at buildings and some of the regulations we tend to employ? I want to recap some of the initial input I've received from your public, and then very importantly, get into the discussion items where I want to recap what you've told me already. You initially were asked some questions at your last meeting, you had some discussions, and you did provide us with some specific feedback, which I very much appreciate. I've incorporated parts of that into this presentation, and then a recap of the next steps of where we go from here. So on that project scope and schedule, we've broken this out into a multi-phase process with phase one being the kickoff, and we're using a technical advisory committee to help us in our analysis. And then what we're finishing up here today is our public engagement phase, phase two, over this month of December. I've had interviews with different members of your community, your development community, owners, architects, developers. We've had an open house listening session last week where we received feedback and input, and then of course a joint workshop tonight. And then I'll be rolling this back with that technical steering committee to tell them this is what we've heard, this is what we understand. And I should also note that in case these screens aren't clear, you of course all have a hard copy of this presentation that you can also then take home for reference. And then in phase three, that's where you won't see us for a few months as we do some drafting, go back and forth with your technical committee, but then we do want to bring it back to your stakeholders that we met with so we can tell them firsthand, this is what we've done, this is how we responded to some of your thoughts and ideas, this is the direction we think the update is headed, and then very importantly, we'd love to come back to you in a workshop setting again to say, all right, this is what we've come up with, this is our draft, what do you like, what don't you like, what still needs to be worked on and addressed. And then we'll get that wrapped up into a finalized code update in an ordinance form that then can be presented at an official hearing of the commission for review and consideration, and then on to you as the council, as the elected body, for your final review and approval. Okay, so clear as mud. So with that, the areas of focus. So what was our task? What are we entitled here with is really wanting to take a fresh look at your building architectural design standards, what needs to be updated, what's maybe a little out of date on how we think about building design today, what are kind of the typical things on how we regulate, and really to strike that balance and bring this back to you on having some good, clear standards that are understandable for your development community, your staff, versus not being so prescriptive that there is not some flexibility. It's all about choices, even on how far we go on design standards. Being, so restrictive that it's hard to develop in town versus not being restrictive enough and you're not seeing the development you want that has that long-term durability and survivability. We want to focus on standards related to multifamily residential structures, commercial mixed-use structures, office, and industrial buildings primarily. We are looking at those low-maintenance, durable, long-term quality exterior materials. And then how do we reinforce the city's brand and its appearance primarily and especially along our major corridors, our entryways, our primary development areas, those areas of focus in the community. Now, just as important of what we are including, I just want to be clear on some things that with this current process we're not including. That might be something for a future phase. We're not looking to require a specific architectural style, mid-century modern or some other type of very specific style. We want to build that flexibility that people can design the building they want. We just want quality design. We're also not touching the downtown design standards. If there are comments and feedback on that, we can sure write that down, document that. But the process here is about not downtown. And then we're not at this point looking at specific standards related to site design. So building setbacks, building heights, parking lot requirements, landscaping, and other site specific design requirements. However, you can sure tell us about them. We will document that information, and that would be a very logical future phase for updates. And I know the staff has been working on different aspects of that as well. Okay, with all that, let's talk a little bit about building design considerations. There's a lot of different ways to split this, but for our sake, I've developed kind of 5 kind of primary things we think of when we're trying to regulate building design for quality. It's the exterior building materials. What are we putting on the building? Lap siding, brick, stone, windows, and then the amount or volume of window and doorway openings. Architects like to use terms like fenestrations, which is just a fancy word to say those clear openings, those openings. Wall and roof articulations, and I have some images to kind of show what this means. Overhangs and awnings, and then scale and proportion. So these are kind of the basic standards we look at in trying to regulate building design. So for those exterior building materials, typically looking at, we want those low maintenance, things that don't have to constantly be painted, caulked, maintained, that are long-term durable. And obviously, as sometimes you go up that chain on higher, low-maintenance material, there is a cost consideration. And then having a mix of material, that can go a long way to really improving a building's architecture, especially as the building gets larger. A very small building can get away with only having 1 or 2 building materials. A very large building benefits from having multiple materials. And then the appropriate application of materials. And it's as simple as heavy stuff on the bottom that appears heavy, light stuff on the top. If you were to put lap siding at the base of a building and then put stone above it, which you could physically do, it would read rather funny. It's not anchored. It doesn't seem like that exterior material is operating the way it should. Window and door openings, this one I think we'll have a lot of good discussion on. This can go a long way to really improving the appearance of a building and its function to a point, because it has everything to do with how the building is being used. So a retail storefront, having lots of windows and glass so you can see into it. Those retailers that think about these types of things do like that because people walking by, driving by can see into the building, realize it's open, it's on. There's things to buy and do inside. It looks safe. And so even our C stores, our convenience stores have gotten on board with this. And you think of some of those quick trips. They're 3-sided entry, a lot of glass, whereas not that many years ago, they had 1 entry and not a lot of glass. And so they are rethinking these. But a doctor's office, kind of sometimes can be contrary to wanting a lot of windows because you don't want those into your exam rooms. And so we have to play this a little bit with a grain of salt depending on the actual intended use of the building. So retail buildings, we tend to push up the glass. Office buildings, kind of a mix. And then as we get to industrial, of course, much less window openings generally. Then the other thing is just this concept of roof and wall articulation. A fancy way to say that we're wanting to not have a long blank wall. And again, this is very building specific. The larger the building, the more important this is. So, you know, on these picture examples, both of these are showing a lot of expression of the wall plane coming in and out. And normally we're talking, you know, at least 1.5 feet, 2 feet in or out to really show a change. There's a material change. We have different types of siding or different types of color. And then the other very important thing is that the roof line, whether it's a low slope or a flat roof, such as in the one picture we have on the right side of the screen, but still that parapet level is going up and down. There's other projections. And then for the townhome product on the left side of the screen, you have different types of roof. Shed roof out to the front versus a low slope porch versus a gable kind of projecting out. Recessing of windows and entries is another kind of good feature. We call those punched windows. If you look at a building that has a lot of windows but they're all flat with the wall plane, it can be okay, but if those windows were just even recessed a few inches, it can make a big difference in that building's appearance. And then pedestrian considerations, and so overhangs and awnings has everything to do with scale again. So if awnings are too short and way too tall, they're out of scale with the pedestrian. They don't read right, and they can actually kind of look funny on a building. So it's very important that those are at a lower level, more at a pedestrian scale, and have kind of the right projection based on what it's trying to protect, or that we're recessing the entryway into the building wall plane. This is a great way to visually acknowledge that's the main entry of the building, that's the front door. Really good retailers and designers do this by default all the time. Office buildings, other places that are going to have the general public show up, this is pretty key. Even your side door here for City Hall is recessed. You know right away it is an entry here. And then one of the last considerations here is just this idea of scale and proportion. So especially multi-story buildings look best when there's a base, a middle, and a top. And this can even be expressed in a modern style architecture building, such as the one on the right, or a much more traditional style building, the one on the left, that you have a heavy base, and sometimes it is a different type of material. In this case, it's a stone material with a middle, and then some type of a top. And so sometimes when we see a low slope building that's 2 or 3 stories tall, but it has either a very low pitched roof or a roof with no overhang or no cornice, it kind of looks a little funny. It looks like it's unfinished. And so these are examples of buildings that have definitely built a top to them. And then on the one on the right that's kind of a more modern style, it doesn't have a very heavy base, but it still looks like a base because it's a different appearance. It has more windows because it's supposed to be a retail storefront, and then has that pedestrian eyebrow or overhang really to say this is our first floor. Okay, before I go on, any questions about these kind of 5 basic design considerations? That kind of makes sense?
So what, when you said on the previous page, reinforce front door, can you be a little more descriptive? Which one are you talking about? Are you talking about a door that looks like it's reinforced with metal and such?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Let me make sure I'm using the right term. So thank you, Mayor. So reinforces to the viewer, the user, that this is the entryway. Okay. So it's confirming.
I was like, okay.
Yeah, not a strength standpoint, that it just looks like the front entry.
Right. And then, okay, very good. Questions, everyone? Councilmember Shield.
I just had a question on terminology. Maybe I just missed this. The advisory committee, the technical advisory committee, who makes up that group?
Great question. So who makes up the technical advisory committee? In this case, it is your city staff. They're assisting through that process. So this consultant has more information on what you've been up to, what your codes, how it's been interpreted, issues and concerns that have been raised. And by the way, I totally did not acknowledge Andrew here. He is with our office. He's one of our designers, one of our landscape architects. He is taking notes for me, just so I don't forget something. So I do apologize for totally forgetting he's behind me.
Did you, is this more what you created, or did you pull some of these based on what we talked about?
So I have more slides that get into what we talked about.
Okay,
And
so
I
these
will-
are, but these are not customized to us in any way?
These are not custom. These are not specifically customized to you, other than
Or customized to Lee Summit suburb type, rather than us as a city council?
not as a
commission?
specific city.
Okay.
This would also work for another suburban
Right.
leading edge community.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions on this? I want to get us all on the same page and kind of the thought process. All right. So a little bit on the initial public input. So we had our stakeholder interviews, and we had our open house. Several of the things that came to light, and some of them were conflicting. We heard both sides of the story, and that's why you are here as the commission to advise, and obviously the council, you guys make the final say. We want to focus on quality material versus having certain specific design standards. And really the intent, I believe, behind that comment was, it's okay to push those more durable materials. Just don't get so picky that we got to have this shape or this size or do this kind of detailing, such as the wall articulation. And then the proper installation materials was one of the more reoccurring comments, especially from your design professionals. This had everything to do with, think of some of the concerns you might have with EFS in the old days with water infiltration, growing mold, leaking. That has 100% to do with installation technique. Are you doing a water barrier? Are you doing a rain screen assembly? Are you having things in place to prevent the water from intruding into the building on all those little leaks and cracks that can develop in any kind of surface material, including EFS? So I'm not trying to just single out EFS. A desire for four-sided architecture, that was raised. Then on the flip side, other comments were concern on having four-sided architecture when the back of the building backs up to nothing or backs up to maybe another industrial area. Is that necessary for us to spend money on it? Prohibition on franchise architecture. Does not have to be one of McDonald's standard buildings, that maybe we can require non-franchise architecture or actually prohibit where we have architectural elements that are actually trademarked, like Taco Bell's little bell shape on their roof line. And I believe this came up from some of the council members at your last meeting, so you are thinking like some of your constituents. A push for long-term quality. Can we build buildings that last many, many decades, 100+ years? Sadly, in the industry, especially I'll pick on fast food restaurants because nobody is here, right? They have a much shorter shelf life. They're designed to go up quick, and then when the business model change, they tear them down and they put up a new one. Well, maybe that's okay for a certain retail stores that you know will just change over time, but do we want that for all of our buildings in town? Do we want that long-term durability? Now, the same side, watching those design considerations, because they do cost money, they do raise costs, allowing flexibility in design, and allowing alternative materials, especially as the building industry keeps creating new things. Like Nichiha, the fiber cement panel system, it's really kind of even higher end than some of the other brand names like Hardy Plank or Hardy Panel. Quality architectural grade metal panel. There's a lot of different systems. Some of those are even more expensive than face brick based on their quality. There was a comment about allowing EFS, thin brick, and other similar materials that sometimes we think are less desirable, less heavy, but maybe they can be on upper stories of the buildings. So out of kind of the shopping cart blight level, where you kind of think of an EFS building at ground level, the shopping carts kind of do damage to it, but up above, maybe you wouldn't notice. Don't go too far in pushing window requirements. focus on building standards maybe in key areas along major corridors. And then one thing that was, I did hear universally from many folks is compliments that the city is really great to work with, good commission, good council, and then city staff. I kind of made fun of that to Amy, that it was kind of getting tired of hearing how great their city staff was. When I do this in other cities, I will tell you, I don't regularly hear that. I often hear the really bad stuff like, no, you guys are horrible to work with. So take that as some positive. So before we get on to your next set of, where I review some of the feedback you've already provided, any questions on these initial feedback points?
Planning Commissioner Frazier, do you mind if I direct traffic?
Go for it.
Can you speak to, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you speak to how you obtained in the format of the public input?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great question. I didn't want to go through too fast through that. So we developed with the advisory committee, your staff, a list of individuals to reach out to. And these are a little bit more on the technical side, so folks that are using your building design standards. So architects, developers, major property owners, other interested parties, asking them to have a meeting. And in this case, I did it one-on-one with many individuals where they candidly provided me their feedback. I asked them a series of questions. I also wanted to know who they are, what projects they've been working on, so I kind of understood maybe where they're coming from. And so many of these comments are from direct feedback. And then last week we had an open house where we did the invite that anyone could show up. And then I asked folks a series of questions, gave them a bit of a presentation, explained what we're trying to do. And that was a little bit of a mix of some residents of the community as well as people that are on the design side.
Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner John Ford, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. You go first.
Thank you, Mayor. So can I touch on 2 points? I just want to have a better understanding exactly how these public inputs were come about as a bullet point. The first, allow EFS, thin brick and such. Was it a factor in considering cost offsets? Is that why there was a possible maintaining similar aesthetic, but obviously better quality of products means more price?
Absolutely. I think you've summarized it perfectly. That when the person was talking about, and this was a couple of people talking about, maybe can we allow some of those softer, little more affordable products. Maybe it's okay if it's on the upper floor because it'll be farther away from the line of sight, harder to tell that it's more of a faux or a fake material versus real brick or synthetic stone or something. So that was it. It was definitely a cost consideration.
Okay, thank you. And then the second question, can you dive further into don't go too far into pushing window requirements? What are the window requirements that they were talking about?
So what would be common with any draft code we might come back to is thinking for retail buildings or certain buildings, do we want to actually require a certain percentage of windows, say at the pedestrian level, at the front door? Or is it on the entire side of what we might call a primary facade or a street-facing facade? Those are different things we've done in other codes or other people do in codes where we literally set maybe a minimum window standard. The concern from this person being that can be a cost consideration. Windows can be more costly. There's an impact on how you design a building because then there could be more solar gain from sunlight. So then energy efficiency becomes a concern. And then the interior function of a building. So my one example, like a doctor's office, they can be a use that maybe wants less windows because those could be into patient exam rooms. And they're already having then to screen them. And so that was some of the consideration. And that's one I think what I can do is bring back some recommendations, especially based on the feedback I think you'll give me tonight, on what's a balance between kind of meeting all those interests. And one of the big balances is not one size fits all. I really think these standards need to be geared based on what the building's intended use is.
Thank you.
Yeah, great questions.
Commission Chair Funk.
Do you have an idea of how often do you see in cities the prohibited franchise architecture?
Yeah, great question. So on actually prohibiting a franchise element or franchise architecture on a building, it's a little more rare. It tends to be, frankly, the fancier communities, a little higher end, the outside of Denver's, the We brought up Carmel, Indiana as an example. Those are communities you tend to see more of the push away from Leawood, from having, allowing a standard McDonald's versus a custom McDonald's exterior. Yeah, great.
Anybody
You guys
else?
are already thinking all about this stuff.
Yes, Commissioner Trapton.
Thank you. So when you say input, one-on-one individual interviews, open house, did you have focus groups? How many people are we talking about for public input here?
So in all sincerity, it is a handful. We're not talking dozens and dozens of folks, and so you got to take that all with a grain of salt. When we have done this in other communities, it is extremely hard to get the general public at large excited because they're not dealing with it. They may not have an opinion. Often if we ask them, it may be, oh, we want things to look nicer. So typically we are going out to the people that are more active in your community dealing with design to get their feedback because they understand the code more. They're living with it. They understand the cost implications. And not every person on the design or development side said lower costs, lower costs. There was other ones, because you had the comments in there that, no, let's push the standards. And so you're hearing both sides. But frankly, when we do this, we do not hear a lot of voices from the community at large. Now, your comprehensive plan, though, is that good tool that you have that is referencing back on some of its recommendations, because that was more of a community-wide input method. Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Mr. Commissioner Kitchens.
Thank you, Mayor Barrett. So for our advisory that we got from the citizens, can you give us a little bit of their background? Just coming from a retail background, there's a couple of these things I disagree with, but really agree with other ones. So if you can give me some of the background of the individuals that we did test, because an educated opinion matters a lot more than an uneducated opinion. And I'm wondering if we weren't siloed in some of our information coming in. I'm hoping not. It doesn't sound like it, but why don't you give me some of the backgrounds, please, sir?
Absolutely, and I hope what I've summarized here kind of shows the diverging opinions. There was both sides. Watch cost, push standards. It was developers and architects and designers primarily. So landowners, developers, architects.
So from an end-use standpoint, did we have anybody that would be leasing these buildings in there?
Folks, several of them were the ones that would be getting people to lease their buildings or selling their buildings.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Okay.
All right.
All right.
You good? Okay, thank you. Keep going.
Okay, we're on a roll. So let's talk about, we did send out questions in advance where we wanted to know from, some initial feedback on, what are examples of buildings and designs that you've liked, whether they're in the city or outside the city limits. What are examples that maybe you didn't like or you don't want to see within the city, and really focusing on commercial, retail, mixed use, office, industrial, multifamily apartments, lesser so on single family townhomes, duplex type of housing. That's a little bit harder for us to set some design standards for you, but really looking at those big ones. And so I wanted to hit some of the highlights of what I heard. The timelessness, not outdated in 20 years. I absolutely respect that. The support for modern design, definitely based on some of the imagery that was shared with me from council members, and then a desire for long-term durability. And so how do we allow these kind of more timeless design, but still, being very comfortable with modern design, a lot of glass, a lot of modern, long-term durable materials. Wanting a mix of materials, understanding that a building, an all-brick, one-color building might not be as ideal if it's a large building. A small building can get away with that. Wanting more of those heavy materials like masonry, more glass, more openings, and then that wall articulation being really important. And then based on the pictures you're liking, really thinking that on, especially multifamily, but on other buildings it can work too, those balconies and decks being very important. And I would agree, those can go a long way to really enhancing the exterior appearance of a building. Moving right along, I definitely heard less on the franchise architecture, concern with that. Why can't we be like other communities that don't have it, that have those more of the dressed-up franchise retailers? Wanting the pedestrian scale retail storefronts, frankly, like what's right down here in downtown. And then using examples of Carmel, Indiana, which I think is a really great example, as well as Franklin, Tennessee, and some of the redevelopment areas within that. And then other things, of course, you did raise concerns with costs. And then this concept that, with our civic buildings, and I think you guys do that civic buildings as landmarks, that we're really kind of setting a tone of what we mean for our community here. And so that was kind of the quick summary. You sent a lot of pictures. I didn't throw them all in here. I just kind of hit some of the highlights of some of the key ones, and I think they really set a message of openings, windows, quality materials, retail, really thinking that boutique retail when we can get it, that it's non-franchise. There's a flexibility also when we're not doing a franchise building. It's really easy for a new retailer to move in there versus, thinking back of the day, Pizza Hut would close, another use would come in there, and they're just in an old Pizza Hut building. Okay, so with that, now circling back, you've heard my presentation. Now I want to do a little more listening from you. Especially from the commission members. What are other building examples that you want to bring up of things you want to see more of in our town? And you can use references from outside the city. And then the same thing on the flip side. What do you want to see us straying away from? What are your concerns?
Who'd like to start? Councilmember Shields.
So similar to what I said when we talked about this last week, I think a lot of these pictures are really beautiful. A lot of them are great ideas, and it was an interesting little kind of introduction when you went through all these different things about windows and awnings and openings and articulations and all that. And I think that's all fine, but I'm going to keep pushing on. I think we should have as much flexibility as possible. That I'm never going to say somebody shouldn't build this, but I don't think that it should be illegal to build something else. Because when we're talking about these codes, that's what we're talking about, is should it be illegal to have an apartment building that doesn't have this kind of articulation on the front, or that doesn't have this kind of material? And so it just, like, so much of this is personal taste. Like some of these things, most of them I think look nice. Some of them I think are really ugly. And that's a personal opinion. I'm fine with people building them. It doesn't bother me that people want to live in them or shop in them. But like the, articulated industrial building with different colors of cement paneling, I think they are ugly as sin. But that's fine. Everybody's opinions are different, and some people love them. And that's fine. It shouldn't be illegal to build something like that. So I didn't send in a bunch of pictures because, again, if somebody wants to build it, if the market demands it, if people want to live there and shop there and work there, that's fine with me. So, thank you.
All right, she knows how to get it started.
Yeah, right?
She knows how to poke people.
I'm just giving my opinion.
Yeah.
All right, who's going to respond to that? Commissioner Kitchen.
So I would agree with a lot of what was just stated, that we shouldn't lock things down so tight that we don't have a capability of the market dictating what the market wants. On the same note, coming from a retail background once again, there are some of these that I can tell you were stated by the developer because of the requirements of leases that storefronts have, such as with glass. The reason that a lot of end users don't want a ton of glass is because in every single commercial lease, you are responsible for that glass that's on the front of the building. It's not a big deal to a lot of people, but for a developer, it's definitely something they look at when they lease out a building. If the glass is not necessary, then they're not going to put the glass in. As far as allowing the market to take control, I mean, that's great. And at the same time, I think there has to be a way for them to not escape, but have a variance to the standards that are there. So having the standards in place really makes it important so that an area looks a certain way or feels a certain way, and so that it attracts more density and more shopping, retail, even commercial places where people want to work and where people want to live. But on that note, I think that is definitely the prerogative of the city council to be able to let people expand the way they want to and to not hold these as rigid standards. So when we develop this language, maybe it shouldn't be as rigid as we would have it be, but maybe allow for control and a stated escape for people whenever, or developers whenever they're looking at moving into an area.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Chair Funk.
We've been all sitting here going through all of the questions that you want us to answer. You've obviously looked at our development standards. Where do you think we are missing?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot of, it's heavy on narrative, and this is where you're trying to strike a balance between being too prescriptive. On one hand, just tell me what the rules are. 9 out of 10 developers just tell me what the rules are so I can know what I'm doing and I know if I'm going to get approved or not. But on the other hand is trying to build in, and I think frankly back to some of the comments, some flexibility that with a really great idea or a reason that we can allow something. So I think we need to be a little more specific. Probably the number one thing is really defining the specific allowed materials, especially considering how we have a lot of new materials and there's good ones and bad ones. And so there's some really high-end metal panel systems that you should probably allow. There is different types of more like faux material that's not a heavy masonry that looks really, really good and has a long-term life that we should probably allow. I think there's even a side part that we should maybe focus a little bit on the permitting process, literally the wall cross-section and design, and forcing appropriate installation. That's really where we often, as communities, and I'm not calling you guys out specifically, fall short, that sometimes building materials are installed by the cheapest contractor with almost the ability to do it. And that's not a knock, because there's plenty of really great contractors who know exactly what they're doing. But when a building fails, often it is where that rain assembly is, where we're trying to prevent an exterior material because it's going to leak, but it has to hit some barrier that's going to then fall out of the wall and not be absorbed into the building and cause rot. And that's why some of our softer materials sometimes have had a bad name in the past because they weren't installed properly. And so that's where I think some attention to the details of the materials, the actual specific quality of the material, and its installation will probably get you a long way without, getting so prescriptive and so strict, to scare away new development and growth. And that's where I think you guys are here for is what's that right balance between having no rules and not having the city built that you want to see versus having too many rules and you're not seeing the level of development you want to see happen. Thank you.
So just to follow up on that, so I'm in real estate, so I do work with the other jurisdictions, and so on one side of us, you have small towns that don't have any rules sometimes, and just about anything can be built underneath a designation that we would define differently. It might have the same name, but it's 2 different rules. And then on the other side, we've got a big city that is too prescriptive at times, and then people you can't get a variance.
Yeah.
You can't get a variance, so the developers or investors won't invest there because they're not about to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars going through the process for no reason. So the question would be, how do we we do offer variances. It seems like we have always been set up to have things in place that are restrictive, but then we do get variances that come forth. And I think we, Commission and City Council, have been open to variances.
Right.
Now, we have some that are like, if we're going to do the variance every time, change the standard. And I get that. But if we don't do that, if we don't just keep the more restrictive things in place and then offer variances, how do you layer this? Do you do more zoning? Do you do more zoning? Like, there's a million different zoning designations in Kansas City versus some of the smaller towns that have, minimal different designations. So how do we keep the culture, because we all won't be here 10 years from now. So how do we keep the culture going and with staff and this thing where we do want quality, we do want some restrictions, but we want to be able to offer variances. And we also, I do agree though, if we're going to do a variance every single time, we've got the wrong zoning. Or zoning requirements, not the wrong zoning requirements. So does that make sense? And how can you help us with that?
That 100% makes sense, and that's what most communities do wrestle with. What we tend to default to is be a little bit on the strict side so that you have the ability to say, no, we want different, but then build within the structure that rather simple variance approval, that if it's, with the commission's recommendation and then the council's authority, that you have the ability to waive something because they're meeting the intent or there's a practical hardship without going through the difficult test of, say, a formal variance through your Board of Adjustment zoning board. So that is something we typically have been seeing where we go a little more strict and then just know from an operation standpoint. The other thing is to be flexible to modifying your standards over time. Often when we're doing a new code, we talk about writing it to the 90th percentile. It's nearly impossible to write a code that's perfect from day one. There's going to be something in there that you end up not liking. So give yourself, your staff, everyone the grace that you're going to come back, you're going to test drive it, you're going to find out what you're constantly given a variance to, and you're going to undo that. And so you'd come back in a year or in two and modify that. And so really having that base structure of an updated code where you have that ability to easily come in and adjust your standards. So if we do things more in table form, if it's a little more of a unified, it's a little easier to adjust those standards. The other one I think is, and I touched on it earlier, is focusing more on building use, building type, versus just on zoning district or corridor or something. Now, if we want to go extra special in a certain corridor area, I think that's also fine with, say, an overlay or another tool. But I think if we're go a little strict, we build in the variance structure administratively through you, and then focus by building type.
How often do you see these overlays? Because we've talked about that. I know at council's level. I don't know if you guys have it at commission. I'm sure we did maybe during comprehensive planning, but is it unwise to put an overlay on 50 Highway, because that's one of the corridors that we have really tried to focus on as far as cleaning up and making look more uniform or presentable?
So I'm of two minds on this one. Unwise, no. I think it's absolutely a very viable and rational tool if you have a special interest area, such as 50 Highway, that you're wanting to do something special to. It has certain types of zoning, certain types of uses, and you want to do a certain type of enhanced level of exterior, or you want to allow for some redevelopment. I think that's a perfectly fine tool. From an ease of application, though, sometimes it is easier to make sure that it's also a citywide standard. So I think what you need is a base citywide standard, and maybe if there's some certain areas where you want to go a little above and beyond, that might be appropriate, especially if you're kind of a little bit split on, maybe this is too strict everywhere, but I really want to see it over here.
I'd like to know what everybody's opinion is on having certain areas where we have an overlay. So, Councilmember Rader.
Thank you, Mayor. Does this thing work?
It's on.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say, I think I submitted some of these pictures, and I think they're beautiful. I like the different. I still love you, Hillary. Most of them. Because they have, there's different types of architecture here. There's depth. There's, and I'm not an architect, so I can't use all the architect terms. But I like this one that's got the glass with the open space above it for a patio, for instance, an open air patio. I think that this was brought to our attention because I believe we need to step up our game architecturally in with our building here in Lee Summit. We have, for lack of a better way to put it, I think we've got 2 cities that are going to be coming on here pretty soon with all the new land that will be coming forward. And I like the idea of having some more restrictive area for something that's very planned, the way we want it to look. It's a vision of how we want it to look here. I think that's perfectly okay. I go back to a lot, there's that, and I hate to compare, but that, is it Park Place over there? Is it in Leawood? Where they did that mixed use in there? Oh my God, it's so cool. They've got an outdoor venue. They've got the you know, apartments up above, and you've got boutique shops, and there's just all kinds of things going on. I would love to see more of those kinds of things here, with more landscaping and that type of thing. So I like that we're doing this. I would like us to step it up and to be maybe a little bit more restrictive. I think we should always be flexible, and I think we should always be looking at what's marketable. But I don't think it hurts to, you know, be a little more demanding of how we want things to look. So, thank you.
Okay, very good. Councilmember Lovell.
Thank you. Like in regards to an overlay, I remember when we were like 291 corridor, we've got a number of strip centers and things with CIDs like coming in, and maybe that design comes forward. I think some sort of uniformity or design standard for those versus the person coming in and kind of laying it out for us, because I think we could, especially since there's an incentive involved and understanding that, I think, and then that would allow some consistency down 291 as it comes on board and people come in, and the expectation, I think some uniformity might be nice. When it comes to, you know, I certainly don't want like building to be illegal in this town, but I do think, and it gets back to especially incentivized projects. So I think where I think of, especially the advent of the mixed-use development, right? We went away from big box retail, giant parking lots, and really seen this movement where a developer's coming in and trying to build in some sort of residential component, some retail. And so I guess this would be a question for you too, because I'm not sure it's something you do in here, but it's like also is kind of the design and the layout of how you're doing it. So I might pick on Streets of West Pryor. I think we really raised the bar on a lot of different uses there, right? But we didn't require four-sided architecture, but yet you might come into Firebirds and you come in the back and there's the dumpster and there's all the stuff on the back of it, right? And it really is just a shell with some stucco and very, again, you know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But I'm also starting to see what I'm seeing there is that the traffic and the driving through there is going to be problematic, just like as it became over there at Summit. Is it Summit Woods or Summit Fair? I always get those confused, right? So it's kind of a, so I think like it is understanding how you lay these out, understanding the developer's concern is primarily parking. We're in the Midwest, so I always tell you is like people want to park and walk right into their store. Don't necessarily disagree with that. They would tell you Park Place has been a mitigated disaster from a developer standpoint, even though it's beautiful and it works well, that they've had trouble keeping that stabilized and making money on it. So I think there's this fine line, but I also, you know, again, I'll pick on Streets West Pryor, that apartment building there, I love the retail component behind it, but like, they got a healthy incentive on that, that thing being made of brick and having some depth and things like that. I think, the landscaping, again, the parking, pushing the streets smaller, the connectivity, like we don't have any connectivity in these developments. Like you don't really, outside of playing Frogger, walk from place to place to place. And then the apartments on the back of it, they're there, but like, it doesn't feel like encourages community to me, right? I'd rather see like brick and kind of brownstone looking things. Again, that's subjective, but I think it stimulates community. I think it's more attractive, and I think people like, if I live there, I want to be able to walk and connect to these different places, just like where we place detention ponds and how we beautify those things and some of those things. So I think like part of it is trying to understand how to best lay these out so that they become walkable but parkable at the same time. Right. And then how do you soften? I'd love some of these drawings there. And I think, in my personal opinion, is that if you're coming to us and you need a sizable incentive to do this, let's make something that's going to stand the test of time from a design and beauty standpoint. And really, I think that's where that opportunity is, but not to be too restrictive on one-offs or things. Like you're not going to always have that, but back to what we have coming, and I think this is where a city like nobody's surprised when I mentioned Carmel, but like one of the things they did is, I mean, they kind of drew out this open land and said, like, this is kind of how we see it, right? From a layout standpoint. Now come in with your building materials and show me what it looks like and give you some flexibility there. But, so I just think like, I think there's a lot of opportunity here. I think we don't want to be too restrictive, but I do think in certain pockets or certain areas, especially when the incentives are involved, that gives us much more flexibility to say like, cool, but we're going to be here with some of these design standards. And we can work with you on the incentives to make sure that that works from a retail component, a residential component. And so that's kind of where I see it going and what I would like to see more of.
Excellent. I told Mayor Potem I'd go to him next. Lopez.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we've had some really good suggestions. There's not a whole lot more that I can be creative with that hasn't been said already, so I don't want to be redundant. However, I think some of the examples that were given as actual examples of if we do get too strict, like Park Place, over in Leawood, they have had a hard time in retaining some of their tenants, and that's retail. But I think as we continue to grow, we have the mix of the renovation of existing older shopping centers. I think we do need to be consistent, especially if they're on major arterial roads with design standards so that, you know, they're just consistent across the board, especially if we're asking our taxpayers that are consumers there at these locations to pay an extra 1% or whatever. So that's something that I think we should be focused on. And then I think it's already been said, again, I don't want to repeat, but as we continue to grow into these newer areas, the new land that's being proposed, the PRI land, that could be the opportunity. We call them activity centers, right? We have activity centers with the comp plan. That might be the opportunity to go ahead and be a little bit more strict, and could impact incentives in these kind of newer places, newer opportunities. And then we can tone it down if it doesn't work out as far as being flexible and variances, as the mayor said. So those, to me, those are things for us to look at. But I think something that ties all of these, whether it's an older shopping center, we don't have a lot of offices around Lee Summit, but as we consider new offices coming into the market, the walkability. The walkability's got to be something we focus on, whether we have parking garages or, you know, large parking lots. We have to continue to think of the public, our citizens and visitors that come, make sure they're safe and it's easy access and it connects to other trails and other activity centers. So just some additional thoughts. Thanks.
All right, thank you. I thought I saw one of you too. Councilmember Shields? I'm sorry, I can't see you guys. You have to wave at me if you're.
I was just going to say, I actually agree with a lot of what Councilmember Lovell and Mayor Potem Lopez said, that especially when there's incentives involved, I'm more open to those discussions about being a little bit pickier. You know, because if it's taxpayer money that's going into it, taxpayer incentives, I think, you know, obviously we do have a little bit more of a say and more discretion there. So I'm open to that conversation. I feel like when we talk about like cool looking developments or mixed-use developments that have, you know, a certain look to them, I think a lot of that gets accomplished through their own private CCRs, their covenants, conditions, and restrictions about how they're going to design and operate themselves. And I guess I feel like we don't necessarily need to impose as much, because when we're talking about like a bigger development like that, they're going to have an idea of consistent design throughout. So I'm not always sure
What development are you referring to?
No, just generally, like when we're talking about honestly, I'm not totally familiar with ones that were brought up Park Place or whatever. But when you're talking about, when you're talking about a Discovery Park or a Summit Fair or Summit Woods, like they're going to have their own restrictions in place that kind of say what they want that to look like and will be consistent throughout it. So I don't know how much of that needs to be accomplished through these tools versus how much of it is accomplished on that private side. So
I can think of two in the what we call SLR land now. I can think of two areas where we have sort of planned activity centers. One on the north side at Strother, I think, is going to be commercial. Right, Strother? Strother up to Woods Chapel. That would be an opportunity where we could possibly elevate things with overlay. But on the south side, I think the activity center is probably more than a decade away. But at the same time, if we're going through this process, I think, and we're talking about it, and we want to plan for the future, this is the time to do that, right? This is the time to talk about that activity center. I think it might be, there's so much acreage down there. We're talking about 3,100 acres. So yes, it is a city. So there's an activity center area that's like right off of the Rock Island Trail. That could be a very walkable area. At least that's what people have talked about, yeah. And I think that's an opportunity that we could do something very, yes, amazing by thinking having the vision and foresight to saying, listen, they're going to develop 3,100 acres. They're going to start with probably a lot of single family on the south side, which is great. We love single family, but what about this overlay for this area and doing that now? Now we have to work with SLR on this, so that's a challenge because they really want to have a say as to how their land develops, and they've been a partner basically with the city staff for the most part for the last 4 years. So there's a process, but I think it could be brought up, and I think that they do want to do something special, and I think that that's a good location. But I think the closer one is the north side. And I also think one thing that's really interesting is as I heard the conversation go around, like I heard Councilmember Lovell say four-sided architecture, and he was talking about the backside of the property. It's so hard because it's not a one-fits-all type of thing because that's retail. When I think about four-sided architecture, in my world, I hear constantly people are just like, why do we want to do an industrial building? Why does it have to look pretty on the backside of the industrial building? And I really get that. And so I think that's why I was asking about the different zoning. Like we have LCRA areas, right, Mr. Dunning, that have, and Mr. Elam, we have LCRA areas where you could still actually have we used to have areas where you could still have a yard in the back, a lay-down yard, which I don't know that we have any at this point. But it was because they backed up to nothing. They backed up to what was going to be nothing. They might have backed up to the railroad. They're just things that I'm sure we can do, but I think we need to, as a commission and council, we need to authorize staff to start bringing some of these things forward. But that would mean more zoning, I think, or it means something, right? It means an overlay that says, well, here's your standards, but there could be an overlay that has more restrictions. But could there also be an overlay that has less restrictions, like we've done with the LCRA? Mr. Dunning?
So, Mayor, probably what you're referring to, a couple of our LCRA areas are overlaid from what used to be and perhaps still are recognized as metal building areas.
Yes.
Which relaxed, right? And we identified those pockets within the city where we said, and we communicated it through our zoning code saying, metal building areas are allowed only in these two areas. So I think
those are
that's
high demand, just so you know.
Correct.
But they look different now than they did.
That's true. They do look different now.
I think the short answer is we can bring back some options to address just that exactly. In certain situations, four-sided architecture doesn't make sense. And often it's a more industrial building that has, say, an industrial yard that really doesn't back up to anything that we really think we need to have that. Whereas I can think in many cases where you'd want four-sided architecture on a multi-story apartment building because of how it's sitting in a neighborhood. So I think we can it's almost using like multiple points where it's a combination of zoning, it's the building use, and then I'm almost thinking if we almost create like an overlay district framework. Maybe there's one that's actually created today, but you have a framework for, say, that future SLR land to the south or the PRI land in the future, that you kind of have the groundwork, that then you can work with the developer or if there's a master developer as they're developing their restrictive covenants. Because you probably still want some kind of a baseline to make sure you're getting what you want. But then I think that is very valuable to then get that input from them on specifically what they're trying to do. And often the development and why they're doing restrictive covenants is because it is a design theme they're wanting to meet. And then, if it's a different building, they'll change it because they might want the lease arrangement. So you at least have that city zoning to fall back to.
Okay, very good. Yes. I'm sorry, Councilmember Carlisle, and then I'll go to Commissioner Trafton. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. And I just wanted to follow up with what we've discussed right before you, and then I'll get to what you've just said. But so, as far as what Councilmember Lovell was talking about and the use of incentive, and we can demand more when we do that, and I absolutely agree with that. But as far as, the walkability of an area and really it being more, geared towards people, so it looks family friendly and it looks, personable. I think those are things that we should be steering to always have. I understand that everybody needs parking, and I know we're in the Midwest and everybody wants to park and walk right in their store, but you can still hide that parking by where you're putting your buildings at, right? So I'm not saying we gotta put all the buildings right on 470 or right up against the highway, but, they have a pretty good setback and then a yard, and then you see, 800 feet of parking lot, and that's not pretty. That's not pretty to anybody. And then if we're hiding those parking lots in behind the buildings, it kind of helps to split that up and make the area more walkable just by doing that. Because people, if you're, first of all, with the dumpsters, it's forcing them to really have four-sided architecture because you're parking in the back, right? And so they're not gonna want where they know their people are gonna park to be next to a stinky dumpster. So they're gonna keep that cleaner, make it look better. But then also, people are gonna be able to walk from building to building without playing a game of Frogger, because they have to walk across 400 feet of parking lot before they can get to the next building. So I think just thinking about it in that way, and I understand it's very expensive to build parking garages, and not everybody's a fan of parking garages. I am not a fan of parking garages. I don't like parking in them, but I also don't like looking at parking lots everywhere you look, right? So I think just looking at that and thinking about how we can redo that just by where we're placing things, that's not gonna cost any more really to the developer is where we should start and kind of get our way there. I would absolutely love to have every area in the city be walkable and be able to walk right into the next area of the city. That would be, huge life goals for the city of Lee Summit in my mind. But I understand that that's not always feasible right now and upfront. You have to kind of work towards that. So I think that's something we should really think about when we're looking at what's coming forth, is just the placement of everything. And then as far as overlays go, I think we've had a couple areas where we have done overlays, and overlays were done prior to me that were not successful. And they were not successful, I think, because they were too restrictive. And so we've kind of learned our lessons in that, and we can move forward on those. But I think overlays are a great idea, especially if you're looking at certain things in certain areas of the city for certain reason, right? And if at least that's out there and they know it coming in, then they know what to expect. And if that's not what they want to do, they can go somewhere else in the city for that, right? So I think overlays are a good idea, and master planning areas is a great idea. I think all this land that's coming on, we really should be looking at master planning so that we can tell the development community what we want to see Lee Summit look like in the future, and not have them just come to us and say, we want to put this here, can we do it? If we can give them an idea of really what we want the future of Lee Summit to look like, I think that helps everything, and then they don't have to come and we say, nope, we don't like it, and then they get turned down, right? So I think that really helps everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Trafton?
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Carlisle. You stole a lot of my talking points, but I appreciate it. We're on the same page. Since we have been talking about overlays, and, I do agree. I don't think that we want to have every building in Lee Summit look alike in every neighborhood. I think that we do want diversity and differentiation of areas, but I do think, I know why we have an overlay in downtown, and that's good. And we talked about an overlay in Longview, and that didn't happen. And because of it, we have, front-sided architecture. We don't have four-sided architecture that we had planned for that whole development now. And so I don't think we can always leave it in the hand of the developer, is my point. I think and I like the idea of saying, well, let's be a little more strict in how we're gonna set up the standard, and then let's figure out if we wanna have a variance. Because I do think we want certain areas to look uniform, so you're going into that activity center. And I think it's great, to have variation in the architecture and what we're doing. And I do like a lot of the new materials you're talking about bringing in. I mean, we do need to materials continue to evolve, and we need to evolve with them. I think we also need so we need to have that flexibility, but I do think we need to say in certain areas, we want this commercial area along Todd George near the airport to look a certain way, because we want that area to look like this is a commercial area. Come and put your corporate office over here, like a corporate woods or something like that. But I know Amy's gonna give me the hook, because I do get on this, we do talk about this in Planning Commission, but easements and landscapes and streetscapes, to me, are crucial to how people understand who we are as a community and the level. You can drive through areas of Leawood and Overland Park and not realize there is an apartment complex behind, because there's a 30-foot setback and burns and nice evergreen landscaping. And right now, so I know we're getting into that, Amy, so I won't get on that. I know this is not what this is about today, but I appreciate it. But I do think there's a place for overlays, and we do need to be strategic in this community, knowing we have areas that we want to look a certain way and make it look that way. I think Councilmember Lovell said, the Rock Island area, whatever district, and go with it. So anyway, I think I've made the point, but thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Kitchen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought I should just comment, being the owner of a chain that has had storefronts in some of the places that we've talked about, the Park Place in particular. Beautiful area. They have really struggled to keep people in there, and it does have to do with the way that it's set up and is planned. Now, right next door to it, we have Leawood Plaza Center, which has the highest retail receipts in the whole entire metro. And that is literally next door to the same facility. Part of the reason is they have great parking, they have long-term tenants, and they have large tenants. One thing I would hate to see come out of this is that we have too small of areas for retailers, for shops, for even certain industrial or commercial partners that want to go into those areas as well. Sometimes we limit ourselves because we get too design friendly, or too design restrictive, I guess I should say, and that we want it to look a certain way, but that detracts from the anchor stores that keep the other stores there. Park Place is a prime example of that. Their areas and their locations are just too expensive to build in, and they're not big enough for some of the retail that wants to go in there. I love the idea of mixed-use development. That is the future. Any problems we've had in Lee Summit with retail are almost completely geared to the fact that density is not quite there. We need the density, and Commissioner Trafton hit the nail on the head. That's right, Terry. That's what I said. With the setbacks and the ability to have high-density housing, whether that's smaller condos, duplexes, et cetera, very close to the retail areas, and walkability being the score and the key to that. Councilmember Carlisle hit the nail on the head when she talked about parking being hidden from everything as well. If you go to Leawood, in the area that we're all thinking, and Prairie Fire, et cetera, right there, you do have some big anchors right there. Walkability score is very high. And if you all didn't know, Deerbrook is right there on the side of the road. Beautiful brick architecture. You can barely tell that there are a bunch of condos and apartments right there, but they are right off the main drag. The parking is in the rear, no one can see it, and the facility is right next to the parking, which is great to use. A pickleball, swimming pools, everything that we need is right there. And Lee Summit, using overlays, we can make those areas compatible. If we get too afraid of the overlays, I'm afraid that we won't be restrictive enough. I think that's the answer that we have here as we look at this. The overlays, keeping areas where we want them, while still allowing our industrial partners, which I do agree, the metal buildings have come up way up from where they used to be, and they're beautiful too, but we need to keep them in the right areas, and having the proper zoning and the proper architectural restrictions on those will allow us to pull the right mix of partners to the right areas. And I think that's what developers want. I know that's what end users want. And as far as the citizens being able to walk between them and see the beauty of it, I think that's where we need to hit. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner John Ford.
Thank you. So it sounds like a lot of these changes of variations and inclusions, they kind of tie back to what wasn't as part of the focus, the zoning setbacks and parking. So
Yeah.
how is it a way that we could address that as part of this design revamp, so to speak?
That's a really great question, because you guys have provided some great feedback on site design, building placement, setback buffering, and I bet Amy wants to answer that. I was gonna volunteer, but
Go ahead.
go ahead.
No, it's a great question. So we've been getting wonderful feedback on landscaping, preservation, setbacks, parking, things of that nature. And so what we're doing is we're still taking notes of all that and collecting it. We actually already have in the works landscape and tree preservation buffer updates to our code that we'll be returning to the CEDC in February, I believe. I'm getting a yes. So that's already underway. And so what we're doing is basically right now hitting our priorities. The first one was we had some housing stuff underway. This one right now with the architecture. Once when those things start getting, in the works and finished up, then we absolutely will start looking at site layout and site design items too. We do have a really great foundation for that. You talked about master planning earlier. We have a great foundation already set in place for us too with a comprehensive plan. But these other conversations about site layout will not get lost.
Thank
Does
you.
that answer for you?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Commissioner Frazier?
Can you hear me okay? At least the folks here. I would honestly like to echo just about everything everyone else has said, but one thing I believe resonated, and that is that we should be in a position that we share what we would like, we as a community, we as citizens, what we'd like to see, instead of letting the developers and the architects dictate to us what they think we should have. Now that goes back to my question or my point earlier in that I'm a numbers and a data person as well. So I want to look at, I'm looking at the responses. I'm looking at the input that you received or did not receive, not only from, again, the developers, but also the community. We cannot leave certain communities, what I'll say, behind and not be in a position to take them or connect them as well. We know, Lee Summit is to me, makes up multiple cities. You've got, smaller cities or older areas, if you would, on this side. You've got, and they butt up right next to newer development. So the ability to be flexible in what we do and what we recommend is quite
Can you
important.
try the other?
That one?
Yeah, try the other one. See if it's louder.
Is that better?
Yeah.
So I would just recommend or hope that going forward, we somehow or another obtain greater or more input from the diverse communities in Lee Summit. And walkability, parkability is crucial, I think, as well. And you also, when you bring those folks in, you're also going to look at, the different types, the different designs of multifamily buildings and facilities as well. Whether those are twins or duplexes or the multifamily, multi-story. So again, planning is everything. It's key, and to be able to connect all of those differing communities to continue to move Lee Summit forward, I think is very important. But we need that input. And we need to be able to sit down and say, this is where we would like to go based on the input from the constituents.
Very good. Yes, Councilmember Carlo.
If I could just follow up on that really quick. So I think some of what I'm hearing about needing constituent feedback, so if we can tie what we're doing back to our comprehensive plan and show this is where the community said this is what we want, so this is what we're doing, and then we can really understand all sides of it from there and not just having the developers talk to us.
Very fair.
Yeah, the comprehensive plan, we did a lot of work on that. We have, we should always be looking at it and reconsidering it, as we move forward. So it does need to be top of mind, part of the discussions, but also how will our decisions now maybe even change the comprehensive plan? So, yes, sir. Commissioner Benbrook.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to touch on a couple points. When we talk about walkability, that goes more towards site layout, so it's really not too much a point of this conversation. And really, we need to look at parking lot design. And when you get into that, then you start adding costs that are not going to be returned to the developer, right? So we need to be cautious about how we define walkability as we go forward. Overlays are an excellent way to solve what we're trying to do here, right? We're trying to say, hey, in an industrial area, it doesn't make sense to put all these restrictions. In the downtown area, we want a certain amount of restrictions. And in new developments, we want a new adventure. We want a redesign. We want some different activities there, and that all is complete common sense. When we look at building design specifically, energy codes are changing. They really dictate how much glass you can have in your building, so we need to stay away from percentages on glass, I think, in my opinion, because the code is going to maximize that or give us a maximum, right? Materials, I think, is really where we need to focus on, and articulation in the right overlay. Obviously building articulation in the downtown area doesn't make sense. It would look odd. You want the flat face, you want that old downtown look, but we certainly can do it elsewhere. Some of these pictures are great, but I want to stress they don't scale, right? You can't take this beautiful picture here and turn it into a 2,500 square foot building. It doesn't happen. So when we look at setting standards, we need to look at percentages. Like, are we currently comfortable with our masonry requirement? I mean, I don't know if it's 25, 35, I can't remember offhand, but do we want to bump it to 50? And if we do bump it to 50, in what layover area or areas are we going to designate that at? Obviously, again, industrial doesn't make sense. But downtown area, well, it's all brick. We want a higher masonry. So I think when we look at materials, we need to really, and architectural standards, we need to really talk about that. And I'm going to get into site layout just for a second. I know
Can't do that.
I know, it's terrible. One thing I would love to see is a more, I'm trying to figure out how to say this now, intimate outdoor gathering space.
Sure.
Okay. I love our little downtown area. There is no place to hang out with 5 or 6 friends and eat an ice cream cone outside. And it's because of the way that area was developed and originally built, and so we're kind of stuck, right? But we have opportunities to create that in these new developments, these more intimate little gathering spaces here and there that don't require a huge amount of landscape, that don't require a large cost, but allows you to sit down with maybe your family and a couple friends and eat an ice cream cone or a taco or whatever you want at the time. And if you spread those throughout those developments, it feels walkable, even though it not necessarily is. So those little details are really what makes the community or those areas successful. It's not necessarily putting these huge restrictions on them, but taking an opportunity to take those small detail items and incorporate it into the design, into the requirements of these overlay, to make it successful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I love that idea.
Yeah, thank you. Very good. Sir, Commissioner Tuzinski.
I concur with Commissioner Benbrook. I mean, he brings up some really great points. Right outside this window right here, we're going to have a lot of those questions answered. And I love tacoaholics, so yeah, definitely take a taco down there and eat it. But one of the things I agree, and Commissioner Rader said some things earlier, and she was council member. Yes, I'm sorry, it's so long as commissioner, but Councilmember Rader. I think it's the vision of what we want the future of Lee Summit to look like, and you're right. There's a lot of really great pictures, and I'm an engineer, so I am not gonna, even say anything about Commissioner Benbrook and Commissioner John Ford, because they are architects and they know what they're talking about, and how it scales. But it's kind of one of those things, you know what you like when you see it. And even, Commissioner Trafton down here talked about sections of Leawood, Overland Park, when you drive down and you don't see parking lots, you see backs of buildings that are really nice, you see nice amenities with the landscaping and that. You see it, when you drive it, you see it, and you know what you like. I look to the future of Lee Summit to be that way, and Mr. Mayor brought up a great point. We've got I-470, a lot of opportunities along 470 that could be an overlay district. You have a lot of opportunities along 50 Highway that could be an overlay district, but there's a lot of older infrastructure that's gonna have to be improved upon or down the road, be reconstructed. And then you have the PRI ground south and all that opportunity along 291 of what you could do over there with a real great meeting place, restaurants, other facilities for people to really come and enjoy, almost like I think Councilman Lovell said it, like a downtown south, a downtown somewhere else that you could have a lot of restaurants and nightlife there. And so I think we're getting here with what we're talking about, but I think it's that vision. And fortunately, as a recommending body, I love talking about what my vision is, but for the council, it's really taking what we're recommending that and then putting it into a vision of the future. So I love being a part of it, and that's really, I just wanted to just confirm all that too. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I want to make sure everybody knows what Frogger is. 'Cause it keeps coming up.
We're not old, Bill.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Do you know what Frogger is? Councilmember Pryor? No, she doesn't. I knew it. I
I
knew it.
whispered to both of them, not everybody knows what Frogger is.
I am almost 50.
I'll show
Do
you, Mayor.
you have any of those magicians that can put mirrors up so we can hide parking lots but still have them?
You're hurting all the millennials.
We want parking lots, but we want to hide them. It is hard to not get into to carry it over, the design standards into the site or the landscaping. We can extend it all the way to the parks. How close is the park, and things of that nature. So it is really hard not to. So I'm going to go back to, for a second, one more thing that I want to make sure I got in tonight while you're here. in front of
Absolutely.
everybody. And that is signage.
Oh, yeah, I love signage. But
Okay.
you just brought the wrong topic to this guy.
So
No, here
I
we
just, I'm willing to, the one thing that I would be willing to be more restrictive on, and I try not to, I really don't, I work with people that are constantly complaining about the restrictions, all right? That's my client typically, right? So, but the one thing that I would love to see in Lee Summit, without being cookie cutter, because we don't want cookie cutter, we want the depth, we want the such, would be some uniformity in signage. And I say that and I see you nodding, because you see, I found something that you agree, yes. The 50 Highway is just a clutter of different signs, and yes, they're grandfathered in, but I just feel like that is one way whenever we go to these, and I thought of it especially when Commissioner Benbrook said intimate. For some reason, if you're not looking at signs, you're taking in the streetscape. You're taking in, even the downtown, we have design standards for the signs downtown, and they don't just scream at you. They blend in, and you take in the street and what's that?
So they're beautiful.
Yeah, and you take in the street, you take in the moment, and it is intimate. And when you've been in the prairie villages in certain parts, or the more high-end commercial retail type of what? Carmel, Indiana. There's got to be some restrictions that we can consider. Now, I know that doesn't make some people happy because they want, businesses, but I got to tell you that we're in a day and age that, like Councilmember Pryor said in our meeting the other day, it's not as critical that. Yes, signage is always going to be critical, I can assure you, but it's not what it was in yesteryear. And what are your thoughts on that?
I wish I had time to pull together one of my pre-made presentations on signage, but I guarantee we'd be here another 90 minutes. So I'm not, but I'll give you my quick couple of seconds on this. So as long as we are very neutral on the content, we're treating everybody within a zoning district or an overlay the same, you know, you have a lot of free hand to set sign quality standards. I would focus on sign design quality standards, especially for permanent signs, but I would still be somewhat generous for wall sign size. Because I think you want your businesses to be seen and understood that that is, and I think building wall signage gets us a long ways, but it doesn't have to be the cheapest panel sign, cabinet sign. It can be individual channelized letters, depth.
About colors.
So colors gets a little bit dangerous.
Okay.
So what I would still try to push more towards is sign quality. I think once you start regulating colors, you can start getting into content regulation. Because if I can't have my franchise, like Starbucks has their franchise green, I think we could get crossways with case law. And that's a gray area. And so and I appreciate
I'll quit bringing
that.
it up. I keep bringing it up.
Yeah,
and
but-
nobody jumps on it and says, yeah.
But I think there's things to do with design signage for freestanding signs, ground monument signs, size and scale to be read at driver eye level, not, you know, miles away. That's a huge difference, let alone the wall signage that goes on the building. And then even the Burma Shave signs where you have one shopping center with so many signs all fighting with each other. And I know you did an update to your temporary sign code, which is another kind of challenge for us to come up with that right set of regulations. Because we want our businesses to be successful, we just don't want to look like.
Okay, and
Pick
I
the city.
have one more question. We as commission and council have tried to really work on some of these front elevations for sure. Maybe not four-sided, but the front elevations
Yeah.
and the glass, and trying to make something look classier than what it has been in the past. And so, but then there's always a way around it. Like, for example, windows that are tinted, you can still stuff your storage boxes up against the windows, and all of a sudden it's not tinted anymore. It's junky looking. So that's inside, I know that Amy would probably say, but how do we get around these types of things where we can control the quality? Because I've been here almost 7 years now. We've approved things that we worked so hard. We made it so great. We made it better. We even denied it and sent it back, and then we denied it, sent it back, and they came back, and okay, it's beautiful. And then, you know, a few years later, all of a sudden you go by that building, it's like, why is everything stuffed up against the windows? I mean, it just isn't, you know, it's like, man, why didn't we think of that? Or how do we prevent that?
So things interior to the building, I think, is going to be a challenge. Now, one thing we do see often, if we have an area where we want a lot of clear windows where we can see into a retail center, like your downtown's a prime example, window shopping. The great retailers understand the value of it, and they specifically do displays. Somebody that doesn't need that, they're going to want to put stuff in the way or put curtains or, you know, clear them, cover them. In some cases, we actually get window clings, so signage actually covering the window, whether it's on the exterior or the interior, it's doing the same thing. It's kind of covering up the window. I think it's a little bit of picking and choosing what's most important, and that could be, like, maybe that's more important downtown, and it's less important in other areas. But I think back to the big question on if Target has all these windows up front and they suddenly want to just store boxes up against it, I think it's going to be hard to, without some extra work, tell them, no, don't do that.
I feel like you're making everybody else happy, but not me here. You
Shoot.
you keep
And I was trying to
denying.
make
You
you
he
happy.
keeps saying no to me. No, you don't.
Only on two.
All right. Very good. Well, what else? What else would you like to talk to Mr. Shars about?
I was just thankful
Yes,
you
sir.
didn't call on Commissioner Trafton when you were talking about signs, because we would have been here another 90
Oh,
minutes.
okay. Sorry. Did I represent well? Okay, thanks. All right. What about you? What do you have? What other questions do you have for us?
So you've done a great job of kind of encapsulating the big points and actually giving me some of the fine details. Some of it I think will be a little bit of a challenge, and we may have to bring you back some options, because there's a little bit of what's going too far, what's not going far enough. And so let us kind of take the many pages of notes we've taken, the really good feedback we've received from you, and run with it through your city staff. In fact, I'll just kind of walk through really what our next steps are over the next several months here, is let us kind of push and pull on that and bring you back some options on maybe overlay format, base code format, building specific, tied back to zoning as well, on how we can address, and I think really the primary is looking at building materials, some good design standards, and then really a flexible framework, and then also this kind of overlay framework for where we want to be even a little more picky. And then we won't forget about the important things like, hey, let's not forget the sign code, let's not forget landscaping, parking lot site design standards, walkability. Yeah, so, but just from a schedule process, what we will be doing is working over the next several months. I do want to touch back with our stakeholders and then have another workshop with you, if that's okay, if you're willing to have me back.
Maybe.
Yep, just timing.
Maybe.
Timing,
You did say no.
just trying to get it all timed. We just got to work with us, and
Yeah, absolutely. And it
appreciate you
won't be
being in
for some months.
person
Yeah.
tonight. Yes, Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you, Mayor. So one thing, I don't know if this is one thing we're supposed to bring up or not, but I brought it up last week. The detention ponds, well, no, retention, whatever, I'm confused.
You want retention ponds, that's what
I don't like
you want the
ones-
water, you want them with the water
I
bottoms.
like the way the ones, or the one, I guess, Price Chopper over there. You said that one looks, yeah, okay, is it an actual pond? Yeah, but the one like near Jack Stack, I just don't wanna see, when the SLR land gets developed, I don't wanna see the ones that are near Jack Stack. Those just, yeah, it just looks like a ditch, it just doesn't look good.
Yeah.
So I don't wanna see any more of those necessarily.
For our small sites where we still have to do detention and meet a water quality standard, they're really tough to design to have something nice, unless we're gonna spend the money on like underground storage vaulting. If we can regionalize or have a retention pond system for a much larger area, it's more expensive, but then we can do a much higher quality body of water as an amenity. So it has everything to do with the size of the project that's being developed. So those little one-offs in town, hard to do, a big new development, much more practical. Yeah, that's a very fair comment. I don't disagree with you at all.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Benbrook.
Yes, I just wanted to follow up with that question. Have you utilized rain gardens in some smaller areas instead of small detention or retention ponds? And have you been successful with that? What's your experience?
Yeah, now you're gonna have us nerd out on site design a little bit, and I'm okay with that. But the hard part is meeting the detention volume standard. Normally, the rain gardens are really good on a really small area where we're needing to meet a water quality standard, or it's an amenity or a feature, or like even along a roadway, where we're not technically providing detention because it was never designed, but we need to do some. So that can be a really nice feature. It has a lot to do with the design. They are a maintenance thing. We need to maintain the plants. There can be die out depending on weather to get them to establish. But yeah, you'll need a little staff time on them or whoever owns them. But I think that can be a great thing, especially in a special area like a road a treatment along a roadway. Yeah.
So taking them and spreading them out through a development such, one of these overlay districts, let's say, instead of having one big detention pond or retention pond, we scatter it throughout the development, several rain gardens where we're draining into different areas as a detention before it hits the main stream.
Maybe, because it has everything to do with the topography of the land, where the water's draining, because we can't change its direction. It's always going to go downhill and historically the way it came. So I think, I don't want to say it's always possible, but it can be. It kind of depends. But I like your thinking on it because then it's more of an amenity. And so anything we can do to make some of these facilities that we have to have a positive versus a negative. I think that can go in a long way with your plaza spaces. So if we're going to have a requirement for a plaza space, and so that can be a component. And maybe I've said way too much. I promised too many things.
Good evening, Ryan Elam, Assistant City Manager. Just on the stormwater aspects, as we start really looking into our stormwater design standards and design criteria, that's really going to drive what's available and how you can apply low-impact developments because you're balancing a lot of different things there. So I just wanted to come up and say that has been identified as a city council goal to look through. And so there's a lot of staff work and effort that's going to go into the overall, I'll call it a stormwater master plan to a certain extent, that's going to really focus on the design standards and that regional aspect, particularly in the PRI property, and how we're handling those as a whole. Much deeper conversation, but all your points are very valid.
Very good. Yes, Commissioner John Ford.
Thank you. So Commissioner Brembrook kind of brought up something I didn't exactly want to touch, but you opened the door. It's just about sustainable design and just how as architecture evolves, especially with 2030 coming around, and carbon neutral, energy efficiency, new IEC code. One of the images actually has solar panels on it. Is there any thoughts or like vision of incorporating how sustainable energy is incorporated into the building facade? You can have ugly solar panels and you can have really nice design solar panels. So seeing that kind of evolve and hopefully be more integrated, I feel that it should be part of the design standards of how to make sure it's not an eyesore.
You know, I think that's something we can actually spell out within this framework. And so we can give you some recommendations and some guidance on maybe some best practices to be permissive for building mounted solar. And some kind of the standards by which we think it's a little less intrusive and can actually fall in with the building. So it has everything to do with, you know, how far it's projecting above the roof. It's being in parallel with the roof line, generally it not overhanging the edges unless it's an architectural treatment. I think there's some things we can give you on that. That's a really great point. Even sunshades for window openings, things like that, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to see a little bit more sustainable architecture just moving forward as
Yeah.
we only have one Earth, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. Did we do good? I mean,
You guys were great. This was fun.
you thought city staff was good. We're pretty good too.
Yeah. Well, you know, the other people said you guys are great, so that you're all doing pretty well here, so.
I think we got a pretty amazing commission and council.
And it was
when
only
comes to
2
this.
hours, not 4 or 5.
You did really well. Good job. Way to redirect us. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, the city council has more things to do, but we had on this agenda just an open roundtable to talk about, you know, in the past, we've actually said, you know, hey, what happened on this one deal? Why did you change what we recommended or things of that nature? We don't want any you all to feel disrespected in any way whenever we make a different decision than you. I don't think we've made any major ones like that one year with the flags. That was kind of crazy. That furniture mart, yeah, that was.
87 signs laid out.
Yeah, that was frustrating. I'm sorry about that. But at least we got to say we were sorry that we didn't coordinate with you, and we took some ownership on our side on that one. But I think you've been doing amazing, and I will tell you that you've got some council members that they've all been here either a little while or they were on planning commission. So even the newer ones, though, when they came on, we've always talked about as a council, watch the planning commission. Watch the planning commission. They are really doing our work for us so that we know what questions we want to ask whenever they get to us. And so I do know for a fact that we do watch planning commission. We watch them to gather our information. And there's not one time that a council member in the last couple of years has said to me, what's wrong with the planning commission? Well, you know, it's all been positive. But I do know that there's sometimes we have slightly different views, and I think that I know that we have a little bit more latitude than you guys do because you have a lane that you really have to stay in, whereas we can step outside of your purview on a couple of things because you've got a job to do for us, and I think you've been doing a great job. But at the same time, I'd like to just kind of open it up, roundtable. Is there anything on your mind that you might want to share? Yeah, Commissioner Kitchens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just be the first to say it, that Chairperson Funk does a great job. He really organizes everything. He's a great leader on the commission, and he's absolutely just nailed it every single time. And from a personal standpoint, I don't think, and I don't want to put words in my fellow commissioners' mouths, but I don't think we've ever felt slighted, with that one notable exception, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to say I abstained from that because I do have a shop over there. No, but no, I've never felt like we were in any way disregarded. And as a matter of fact, I feel that the questions we ask are many times brought up by City Council, and that our time is not wasted at all, but well deserved on there. I will say that a lot of times we ask questions almost rhetorically, knowing our lane, and that City Council can get a better feel for those. So a lot of times you'll hear us say, I know City Council will want to know this. And that's kind of a cue to you all on the council to listen real hard and maybe ask that question there. But a big thank you from the commission, and a big thank you to Sheriff Funk and the council for all they do. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Yeah, we've always said we want to honor your work, but it doesn't mean we're going to agree on every single little thing. But yes, you've been doing a great job. You are, I think, a great planning commission. Any other comments? Anybody? Roundtable this? Anything that's come up? I do think next year, so we've had, I think it's fair to say this, Mr. Dunning or Mr. Elam, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like when the rates went up, you know, basically 2 years ago, yeah, interest rates, yes, thank you. It really, a lot of people pushed pause, and they pushed pause through the end of 23 and then all of 24, and I think that we're going to see quite a bit come before us again in 25. So, I mean, things could change, of course, right? But at least I know that we're starting off with a bang, and there's going to be more to follow. So it's going to be a lot on our plate this year. So we do. Some of these are big developments, so we really appreciate the due diligence that you're providing for us, because it's impossible to cover all the bases unless you guys are doing your job. So thank you for that. I saw you grab your microphone. Were you going to say something?
The nice kind words from Commissioner Kitchens down there, but these joint sessions are great, and I think going back to our Ignite Strategic Plan, and we all work together on that, and being able to work through these in a joint meeting versus the commission doing their part and the council doing their part. And I think the commissioners are wondering, well, how is this going to end up with the council? I think all of us doing this together is a great project. And if we get the opportunity to come back and all of us do it together on the second phase that he's talking about, I think that would be great too.
Let's do that, Mr. Dunning. Let's make sure we do it all when he schedules. Bring them back, and love that you had really good attendance tonight from the Planning Commission. So it means a lot. It does mean a lot to us. It really does as council. I'm looking around. Anything else? All right. Well, I think we should beef up the quality of our dog parks. I mean, we need to have more dog furniture. There needs to be more trees. Do you notice there's no trees at the dog park? Dogs need trees. They need fire hydrants, trees. They need.
It's still on the record.
Oh, sorry. All right. Well, then we're going to take a break, and we'll come back. Council's going to meet back up here. But thank you again for coming, and have a great holiday. We'll take. Let's come back.
Welcome to the Lee Summit Sign Department. We are going to walk you through our process from start to finish. We make signs as needed here. It's not like we just go out into the field and place a speed limit sign here, no parking here. Our traffic engineers, they go through and they'll do field studies. They'll send us down an engineering work order for us to go out, place new signs or remove signs as needed. Coming from the material, our blanks come in and they're just aluminum blanks. We can put our white, our red, our fluorescent yellow, green, whatever. And basically what it looks like is just that there. Throw it up into the roller. And once we got it covered, take it to our work table here, and Tim will cut the corners, cut all the access off to where it's lined up right. As far as the plotter and the software that we use, there's a street name sign there, and he's gonna go ahead and print that out on the plotter so you can see the plotter and how it operates and runs. There's standards for the height, even just on letters on the sign blank. Basically what we have on the computer there is it's pretty much set up to those, and it goes through. It's got a very small but sharp needle that goes through and cuts everything out letter by letter. Once that's done cutting, our next stage would be bringing it over here. Currently picking out the sign letters right now. We call it weeding or picking or however you want to call it. Next, putting it on the transfer tape. Then after it's taped, we bring it over to the roller. That's where we apply it to the actual sign blank. And we'll roll it through one time just to get the air bubbles out. And the last stage is basically just taking the transfer tape off the front of it. And there's a finished product of the street name sign. We'll take you out to the field and show you our process that we go through. We're gonna go out and follow our sign guys, get something installed for you. This is where we check our underground utilities. Tim, you got AT&T?
AT&T's back here.
Evergy, Google, so we should be good to go. We normally put all of our stuff together out in the field. Then once the base is installed, we'll go ahead and put the post in there. We've come up to perfect. And that's how we do it. Simple, quick.
Traditionally, we think as police officers, those responding to law enforcement needs within the community. But honestly, we are there to serve our citizens, and our citizens do go into crisis. They do have mental health crises, and we're being called to those scenes on a regular basis. In order to help serve those citizens better, we did initiate the Crisis Intervention Team Program. These are officers that are specially trained to de-escalate crisis situations. Recently, we've brought co-responders onto the scene, licensed qualified mental health professionals housed within our police department, and they respond with those officers directly to those scenes where a crisis is occurring so they can interact with that citizen and get them the help they need right there on that scene.
The co-responders are either a bachelor or master level in a behavioral health related field. They wear plain clothes, they don't carry weapons or anything like that.
I have a police radio that I listen to all day. Listen for, those key words: mental health, behavioral health, crisis.
There's a lot of officers that just call for me. I have my own radio number.
I also have the ability to self-dispatch to them and say 982 is en route.
Officers en route, 914, Armstrong.
So typically I arrive after they've made it safe. I'll make contact and get kind of the rundown, and then I just kind of jump right in.
I'm like, hey, my name's Allison. I'm a mental health professional. I'm here to help you. I'm not here to take you to jail or arrest you.
Sometimes all a person needs is a voice, someone neutral, someone outside that, can listen. I do a lot of safety planning, including family, their support network, who's close to you. If they're home alone, who can come over and hang out with you today? Can we lock away your sharps? Can we put up your meds? Do you need meds? Can we get you over to the urgent care to get you assessed for your medications? Some of them also are like, oh, I'm so glad you came. This made me feel so much better.
Our main goal as co-responders is to, one, get people connected to the services that they need, and also divert from emergency rooms and jails.
And they almost get a different view of the police responding. That lets me know you care and the officers care.
Please, how can we help you?
My husband has...
In 2020, we had 722 mental health related calls for service. 2022, by that time, 1,479. These mental health related calls for service are increasing. How we're responding to that is increasing the number of crisis intervention team officers we have available, as well as the number of co-responders we have available to respond on these calls.
So what I think is important for the community to know about the co-responder program is that we're here, we exist. All you have to do when you call 911 is ask for us. You know, say, hey, I want a co-responder to respond to this crisis, and we'll go. I was really struggling about 8 years ago on my personal journey with mental health, and I met some amazing social workers and amazing programs that have helped me get to where I am today. I really couldn't see myself doing anything else. We want to help, and that's what we love to do.
So I had a client, we got a call, she had some suicidal ideations, and she really felt that she had nobody. And you know, and getting to know her story and getting to know who comes around and sees you, well then we found a support person and they responded immediately and we made a plan. I called back and checked on her in an hour, and then I checked on her in 2 hours. We were able to get her into the additional services to where she talks to someone every week or more. I just took a person that really just thought they had nobody and nobody would show up for them, and show them you do. And you'll be amazed who is in your corner if you just simply say, I need a little help.
When the person called on the phone, she said that there was a dinosaur walking down her road. Of course, we had to go out and check that out. We get out there, and it was a big African tortoise, probably 60 pounds, walking down the road. When they walk, they really stand up tall, so I could see why she thought it was a dinosaur. I'm Rodney Wagner. I'm the manager of Lee Summit Animal Control. So as you can see, we get all sorts of animals here. You got some guinea pigs off to the side. All the windows up here are animals that are adoptable right now. Every one of these dogs is ready to go and ready for adoption. And the same thing with our cats over here. A lot of cool cats in here now, so this is our 3-acre lot we have out back. This is where we do all the walking of dogs, exercise. We also have a side yard off to the side over there, so we can let them run loose. They can run together, and then we have what's called play groups. Kind of like having a bunch of kids. Here's our vet room. We have a vet that comes out twice a week. This is our Sally Port where we bring the animals into. This is one of our animal control trucks, and we can hold up to 6 animals. We have a lift on the other side to put big animals in. We actually have temperature gauges in here and in the truck to tell us how hot it is. Once it gets to a certain temperature, we bring all the animals back here immediately. So this actually has traps in it, but we do a lot of wildlife trapping. I mean, a lot. So bats, pot-bellied pigs, horses, cows, emus, a lot of reptiles. We had a citizen one time that had over 200 reptiles in his basement. Caimans and alligators in here that are 4 or 5 feet long. You can't keep those. And people do, and they're surprised when they can't keep them. I'm like, really? You're surprised you can't have an alligator in your house? Our main goal here is public safety and also the safety of the animals. And we have very dedicated people back there, and they definitely stay here for the love of the animals, which also includes getting them adopted out. We'll have about 4,000 impounded animals a year. Probably about close to 2,000 are dogs and cats. The cats and dogs, when they get impounded here, they go on a 5-day hold, and then after the 5 days, if the owner doesn't show up, then we can put them up for adoption. To adopt an animal here is actually really simple. You just come in, look for whatever animal you're looking for, find the right pick. You have to go to the adoption room up there and see if you get along with them. You spend as much time as you want to in there. From that point on, it's just a matter of making sure they're spay or neutered and all their vaccinations up to par, and they're good to go. We have a very high adoption rate because we try everything in our power to get animals adopted out. We have Heart of America, a Humane Society that we do a lot of adoptions through. And then we also have other groups. We have some people that literally will just look all over the country for somewhere for a dog to go. And we sent dogs up into South Dakota, North Dakota, Washington State. So it's actually, it's a huge united effort to get all these animals home.
Tarzan's got lots of energy. Hazel's got a weird meow. Belle, she wants nothing to do with the other cats. She'll kind of get her grumpy face going.
And the good thing about the people here is that they get all their friends to get animals too. All of us have probably the limit of all the animals that we can have at home. You know, they are huge animal lovers. If it was up to the people here, we'd have 15 cats running around in here. We had a citizen one time out there, and he was bathing his two 9-foot-long boa constrictors in the front yard. Apparently, I was garnering some attention, and so we went out there and had to have a talk with him about that. Why do I do this job? Oh, dude, I love this job. I grew up on a farm, and taking care of that many animals, you can't help but like animals. This is just like fancy farming. You know, you're just bringing animals in here, taking care of them, and find them homes, and yeah, absolutely animal lover.
I'm Assistant Chief Jim Eden. And I'm Battalion Chief Ben Hicks. And today we're at Lee Summit Fire Station 3. Fire Station 3 was part of the 2016 no tax increase general obligation bond for public safety initiatives. The station was built and occupied in August of 2020. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we've not been able to give tours or have an actual ribbon cutting. So we want to invite you in today to give you the opportunity to see what goes on within a Lee Summit Fire Department station.
Let's go take a tour. This is our admin side of the facility. We use this side mainly for offices. We have a lot of work during the day, whether it's training or doing reports or just generally taking care of the shift that we need to do. At this particular station, Station 3, we do have an assistant chief that works out of here. That person has their own office where they need to manage what's going on throughout the day with the shift and staffing, and as well as running calls out of here. The captain has their own office as well. What the captain does is at this specific station is in charge of both the fire truck that's here as well as the ambulance. And so with all those personnel responsibilities as well as running calls and reports, that's where they work out of. And generally for the rest of the crew, which is somewhere around 5 to 6 individuals, we have rooms to write reports, and we have additional training rooms and other rooms where people can work. Walking into our living area, I think it's important to recognize that we work 48-hour shifts. So in the evenings, after 5 o'clock, after work is done, we may have the opportunity to catch a game or something else as long as we're not running calls. And this gives us the opportunity to do that. When we go into our kitchen, I think this gives you a great reason to know why we go to the grocery store. When you see fire trucks at the grocery store, what we're doing. Also for 2 days working for 48 hours, we buy all our meals at the grocery store, and then we come in here and cook. Just like you guys do at home. So everybody has their own fridge on each shift as well as their own pantry, and then we cook those meals here. Going into the sleeping side of things, we've got a couple different things that are significant. We have our own laundry room, which again is important when we're here for 48 hours. The opportunity to wash and clean our clothes and bedding is very important for hygiene. And walking into where our beds are, we keep the kind of sleeping quarters over on one side of the.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Last meeting of the year. We all got to hurry and get this done to get home to watch It's a Wonderful Life. So we are going to start, a tradition. The fastest reader that on the council has to read all the ordinances.
They're all on my desk. All right.
So,
We should all have to do an It's a Wonderful Life code.
oh, goodness. Girl after my heart.
Every time Hillary reads an ordinance, an angel gets its wings.
Yes. Yes.
That was pretty good. We don't have that many, but let's go ahead and knock these out. We are on agenda item 7A, proposed ordinances forwarded from committee. Councilmember Shields, would you please read bill number 24-219?
Thank you, Mayor. I move for second reading of Bill number 24-219, an ordinance amending Chapter 29, Traffic and Motor Vehicles of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Lee Summit, Missouri by revising Article 5, Division 1, Section 29-354, and Appendix B, Schedule of Stopping, Standing, and Parking Restrictions for certain streets and segments of streets located in the City of Lee Summit, Missouri.
Second.
Thank you. You can't log in? Oh. Okay. We have a motion from Councilmember Shields to move to second reading Bill number 24-219, seconded by Councilmember Carlisle. Is there any discussion? Does everybody she's still trying to log in? If you need to do discussion, Councilmember Pryor, would you just call my name? Or yep. All right. Is everybody else logged in? Okay. Seeing no discussion, please cast your vote. Councilmember Pryor, do you have a vote?
Aye.
Very good. Please record the vote. It should be.
I'm missing one more.
Oh, we're missing one. Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Lopez, you need a vote. What's your vote, Mayor Pro Tem? Okay, please record all the votes. That does move to second reading unanimously. Councilmember Shields, would you please?
Thank you, Mayor. I move for adoption of Bill number 24-219, an ordinance amending Chapter 29, Traffic and Motor Vehicles of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Lee Summit, Missouri by revising Article 5, Division 1, Section 29-354, and Appendix B, Schedule of Stopping, Standing, and Parking Restrictions for certain streets and segments of streets located in the City of Lee Summit, Missouri.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt Bill number 24-219 by Councilmember Shields, seconded by Councilmember Hodges. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. It is adopted unanimously. Thank you. Councilmember Shields, would you please read Bill number 24-220?
Thank you, Mayor. I move for second reading of Bill number 24-220, an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of an amendment to the agreement between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and Titan Built LLC to set guaranteed maximum price 3 GMP3 for Joint Operations Facility and Police Courts Phase 2 Renovations Project in the amount of $21,091,558 and authorizing the city manager to execute the same.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion to move to second reading Bill number 24-219 by Councilmember Shields, seconded by Councilmember Hodges. Discussion. This is actually Bill 24-220, if I said that incorrectly. 24-220. Yeah, here we go. That was Councilmember Shields and Councilmember Hodges. Yep, everything's moving slow. Please cast your vote. I think we did. Oh, no, here we go. All votes are in. Please record the vote. It does pass 8-0. Councilmember Shields, would you please?
Thank you, Mayor. I now move for adoption of Bill number 24-220, an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of an amendment to the agreement between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and Titan Built LLC to set guaranteed maximum price 3 GMP3 for Joint Operations Facility and Police Courts Phase 2 Renovations Project in the amount of $21,091,558 and authorizing the city manager to execute the same.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt Bill number 24-220 by Councilmember Shields, seconded by Councilmember Carlisle. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. Mr. Dunning, they're not able to second. That's why they're voice calling the second. So if we could look into the IT on that tomorrow. All votes are in. Please record the vote. And that bill is adopted unanimously. So we'll go to Councilmember Shields. Bill number 24-221, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I move for second reading of Bill number 24-221, an ordinance approving modification number 1 to an agreement for professional engineering services for Sampson Road Bridge replacement and stormwater improvements, RFQ number 2023-041, with Wilson and Company for an increase of $573,340 with an amended not to exceed amount of $1,157,875 and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion to move to second reading Bill number 24-221 by Councilmember Shields, seconded by Councilmember Carlisle. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. It does move forward to second reading unanimously. Councilmember Shields, would you please?
Thank you, Mayor. I now move for adoption of Bill number 24-221, an ordinance approving modification number 1 to an agreement for professional engineering services for Sampson Road Bridge replacement and stormwater improvements, RFQ number 2023-041, with Wilson and Company for an increase of $573,340, with an amended not to exceed amount of $1,157,875, and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt Bill number 24-221 by Councilmember Shields, seconded by Councilmember Carlisle. Discussion? Please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. It is unanimously adopted. Councilmember Shields, would you please read Bill number 24-222?
Thank you, Mayor. I move for second reading of Bill number 24-222, an ordinance approving modification number 6 to an agreement for professional engineering services for the Pryor Road Improvements from Longview Road to Hook Road, RFQ number 2020-046, between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and TranSystems Corporation for an increase of $198,271, with an amended not to exceed amount of $1,738,396, and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same.
Thank you. A motion to, this is moved to second reading? Yes. Second reading, Bill number 24-222 by Councilmember Shields, seconded by Councilmember Carlisle. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. It goes forward 8-0. Councilmember Shields, would you please?
Thank you, Mayor. And I move for adoption of Bill number 24-222, an ordinance approving modification number 6 to an agreement for professional engineering services for the Pryor Road Improvements from Longview Road to Hook Road, RFQ number 2020-046, between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and TranSystems Corporation for an increase of $198,271, and amended not to exceed amount of $1,738,396, and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt Bill number 24-222 by Councilmember Shields, seconded by Councilmember Carlisle. Discussion. Please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. That bill is adopted unanimously. Thank you. And then we have one proposed ordinance, second reading. We did discuss this last time. It's an administrative action. Councilmember Shields, would you please?
Thank you, Mayor. I move for adoption of Bill number 24-218, an ordinance authorizing the City of Lee Summit, Missouri to issue taxable industrial development revenue bonds in a principal amount not to exceed $26,105,000 in connection with the Douglas Station Apartments project, and authorizing certain documents and actions in connection therewith.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt Bill number 24-218 by Councilmember Shields, seconded by Councilmember Carlisle. Discussion. Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. And that one passes or is adopted 6-2. Thank you all. And then committee reports. Councilmember Shields.
Thank you, Mayor. Couple of items. First, we have a Rules Committee meeting this Thursday, December 19th at 11:30 via Zoom. I don't know if this is the appropriate moment or during comments is the appropriate moment, but I wondered, and I had discussed this with you a little bit a moment ago, if it'd be appropriate to start the discussion of the process for filling our vacant council seat during that meeting.
Yes, I think that'd be a great place for us to start. We've talked to Brian Head, Mr. Head, about the process. He's been summarizing what we did the last couple of times. And I think it would be great for it to go to rules to discuss and then bring forward ideas on how to make it better or stick with the exact same plan if you really want to. But the process would involve us choosing the next council member. And it would involve some type of application process and due diligence process. And I think Rules Committee would be a good place for the discussion about how that application, due diligence, and then selection would take place. So if you're all okay with that, we'll send it to Rules. You'll send it to Rules, Mayor Pro Tem. You guys can start that process. I don't think we can have, I have talked to staff and know that we will not be able to have this in front of you for discussion until the January 14th meeting. The 7th is going to be a very, very, very packed night. It'll be a long night, so we want to have a good discussion on it. So.
I'm glad we can fit it into Rules. Otherwise, we'd be waiting another month there as well. So I think this is about the best we can.
Yes, thanks for taking that on.
Not a problem. And then Finance and Budget Committee, I think is showing on the calendar for the 6th, but we've moved it to the 15th. Is that correct? Okay, so I just wanted to let them know, and I'm sure we'll update the city calendar as well with that new
We'll get the
meeting time.
calendar updated.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, thank you. We're still on committee reports. Committee reports, anything? Council comments? Did you enjoy the discussion tonight with Joint Planning Commission? Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to tell everybody Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah. And yeah, and my favorite It's a Wonderful Life quote is not the one that's super popular, but it's strange, isn't it? Each man's life touches so many other lives. I think that's probably my favorite quote from the movie.
And then the second part of that quote is, when he isn't around, he leaves an awful hole. When she isn't around, she leaves an awful hole. She. Yeah, I love it. That's my second favorite quote. I'll have to share.
What's your favorite?
My favorite quote in the movie is never spoken, but it's on a wall. And it says, all you can take with you is that which you've given away. He goes out and gives away all his money. Save everybody from the depression. So. All right, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Nice. Councilmember Shields.
I want to say I did enjoy our discussion tonight, even if I don't always see eye to eye with everybody. It was a good discussion. And Councilmember Rader, I suspect that all of the photos that you provided are ones that I liked. They were very beautiful. There were a couple that I think were from his boilerplate presentation that were not my favorites. So I just wanted to be clear there. Thank you.
I do think we have an excellent planning commission. They do a good job. They drill down for us and save us a bunch of time. So we want to keep good people on that commission. All right, Mr. Dunning, how are you?
Doing great, thank you, Mayor.
You surviving tonight?
I am. Yep, thank you. Some quick reminders, City Hall closure for the holidays, December 25th and December 26th. City Hall will be closed, and then on New Year's Day as well. Special thanks to all of those who are spending their holidays working, providing service on behalf of the community. Not everybody gets the day off, so we appreciate those employees still out there providing services. I sent you all an email late this afternoon. I need to make sure all of you are aware that our very own Mark Schaffler has announced his retirement. Yes, after serving 31 years, he will have served 31 years with this organization, all in leadership roles, very influential leader. So we'll put some details together for Mr. Schaffler and more formally recognize him, but wanted you to be aware of that because it is becoming more public, and I wanted to make sure you had that awareness. So, yes. And then, yeah, happy holidays to everybody. Look forward to kind of taking some time to share with family, friends, and loved ones, and then really start digging in as we turn to the new year.
You know, that water building is a pretty good looking building. I wonder, somebody knows about elevations and design standards. I wonder if he wants to, look at planning commission someday.
There you go. There you go. Well,
I think he can start bossing around people that he's hadn't had the chance to boss around yet.
Yeah, I'm sure we can enlighten as we recognize Mr. Schaffler on some learning opportunities he's had along the way to develop some of those skills that helped create such an amazing space out there. So
it is a good looking building.
Yeah, it is.
We'll miss you. When is that? January 31st?
31st is actually, January 31st is exactly 31 years with the city for him. February 3rd would be his retirement date.
Okay. Excellent. Well, with that, again, happy holidays to all of you. I'm proud of this council as well. You guys represent in a great way the community, and appreciate you working with the Planning Commission the way you did tonight, and can't wait to go into 2025 with you. So have a good holiday.
This meeting is adjourned at 8:33.